Chapter 2257. That area was when the wasteland market was built. I've read the manuscripts of the previous spiritualists many times, but I didn't find any problems. The wasteland market had been around for hundreds of years, and there were thousands of spiritualists involved. Naturally, some spiritualists would leave notes or manuscripts behind. At this moment, Kelly suddenly said, "Mr. Wendy, has anyone else been here besides you?" Wendy glanced at Kelly, not understanding why she asked this question. However, he still answered truthfully, "My former assistant, Nancy, she often comes and goes here." At this point, Wendy's brows began to furrow. Could it be that Nancy had found something here? "There are some special tags here. I've seen these tags in a private lab before," Kelly said. "Tags? Why didn't I see them?" Wendy asked doubtfully. He was the person most familiar with this place, so it was impossible that he didn't see any tags. This label isn't based on something symbolic. It's based on the books here. These books have their own numbers. If one or two books are placed in a specific location, it can only be considered a coincidence. But if every book's number is placed in a specific location, then it's not a coincidence. Instead, it's hiding some information. What information? I don't know yet. Kelly began to search according to the numbers she found. Because the numbers were more complicated, Zhang Tianyi didn't see anything suspicious at all. Wendell, on the other hand, was watching Kylie's every move. He vaguely analyzed the pattern of the special tags in Kelly's buckles. In fact, he was already one step ahead of Kelly in calculating the clues for the next step. Wendy went straight to the last row of bookshelves and felt the wall behind them. Soon, Wendy found a secret compartment. He reached out and pushed the wall, and a passage appeared on the ground. "There's a passage hidden here. Wendy, do you rarely come here?" Zhang Tianyi looked at Wendy. Wendy's mood was even more unpleasant now. He felt like he was the world's biggest bitch. Not to mention people like Nancy who schemed to stay by his side. Even an outsider like Kelly was able to find clues at the first moment. He had been here no less than 100 times, but he didn't find any clues at all. However, when everyone followed the passage to the space below, they found that it was a pavilion. There was a bookshelf in the attic, but all the books on the bookshelf had been taken away. It was empty. Wenda was so angry that he almost went berserk. Judging from the traces at the scene, these bookshelves were originally filled with books. These books had all been moved recently, and the only one who could transfer things under Wender's nose was Inander, who was once deeply trusted by Wender. "There seems to be a secret marker here," Kelly suddenly said. "Secret mark?" Wen frowned at Kelly. "This secret mark doesn't belong to the same system as the previous marks, so it might not have been discovered yet." Kelly stepped hard on the brick floor. She was very rhythmic. Some places were heavy, some places were light. After a dozen steps, a secret compartment popped out from the wall. There was a box in the compartment. Wen stepped forward and picked up the box, eagerly opening it. There were 2 books sealed with a secret technique. Wendy quickly figured out the sealing magic in the book. One spell was used to preserve books from decay. The other one was used to restrict outsiders from opening the book. However, these 2 spells were just a piece of cake for Wendy. Wen opened the book without any hindrance. The light in Wen's eyes suddenly became clear. Finally, the truth he was seeking finally surfaced at this moment. These 2 books were left behind by his ancestors. Wen stood there and flipped through the books for 30 minutes. Zhang Tianyi was not in a hurry. He just waited. Finally, Wen closed the book. "Did you find any clues?" Zhang Tianyi asked. "I already know the whole truth," Wen said. "And Inander's identity." "Huh. What identity does she have?" "Her ancestor was also one of the builders of the wasteland market, the descendant of the great craftsman Warwick. No wonder she knows so much information that I don't." "So what is her ultimate goal?" "The remains of the sun god in Olympian mythology," Wen said with a gloomy face. "The remains of the sun god? She wants to resurrect the god." "Not resurrection. She just wants to get the body of the god. As for how they are going to use it, I don't know yet." "Then do you know where their next goal is?" "The seal that seals the remains of the sun god is the 4 seasons magic of Norse mythology. At present, we already know the location of 2 seals. so it is not difficult to deduce the location of the remaining 2 seals. Using the magic of Norse mythology to seal the gods of Greek mythology. Is there a grudge between these 2 mythological systems? They have nothing to do with each other. Wen shook his head and said, "It's just that the ancestors felt that it was suitable. So they used the magic of Norse mythology to seal the sun god. And it's not a god, just the remains of a god." Mr. Wen, Mr. Zhang, do gods really exist in this world? Maybe not now, but in ancient times they did exist. That is to say, I have a chance to witness a god. There won't be a chance. Neither I nor Celestial Master Zhang will allow this to happen. But, didn't you say that it's just the remains of a god? For anyone, the remains of a god are a weapon, a terrible weapon. The ancients knew this, so they sealed the remains of the god with a seal. The entire wasteland market can be said to be built for this purpose. Do you think we will allow the remains of a god to reappear in the world? Well, Kelly still felt that it was a pity. She had seen a lot of things today. Almost every one of them was beyond her knowledge. If she could see a god today, even if it was the remains of a god, it would be an unexpected gain for her. Unfortunately, neither Zhang Tianyi nor Wen was in the mood to broaden her knowledge. We'd better act quickly now, Wen said. From the clues I found, those vengeful spirits did not appear after the seal was unlocked, but the result of someone's actions, probably the work of the 10 evildoers. At present, we don't know their purpose for this step, but we can't let the situation continue to deteriorate. If we really let them control the remains of the sun god, then it will really evolve into a big event. Chapter 2258. Not long after Chen Zhao left the crime scene, Bifla found him. "Where did you go?" Bifla asked. "I expanded my senses a few times but couldn't find you. Then just now, you suddenly appeared in my range. Weren't you in Desolate Market?" Chen Zhao pointed at the wraiths in the sky. "I encountered a rather troublesome enemy and killed him." These wraiths are because... Bifla wasn't too surprised. He knew Chen Zhao's abilities. Especially after reaching Shangqing State, he understood Chen Zhao's abilities even better. In terms of combat ability, even if he was 10 times stronger, he still wouldn't be Chen Zhao's match. Of course, Chen Zhao was only strong in combat. In other aspects, even 10 Chen Zhao couldn't compare to him. "Do you know who he is?" "No. He said he's very famous. His name is Scythe. Have you heard of him?" "Yes, I've heard of him. He's indeed famous. Very famous, actually," Bifla answered calmly. "That famous? Basically, he's a big boss in movies and TV shows." "I think so too. Anyway, his magic tends to be evil. Didn't you get any spoils from him?" Chen Zhao took out the Grim Reaper scythe. "I stole his weapon. This isn't a living weapon." Bifla immediately saw something wrong. "The living probably can't use it. My friend has one too. I'll ask him how to use it later." "You really have a lot of friends." Bifla looked up at the wraiths in the sky. Since Bifla had appeared, they'd been attacked by more than 10 waves of wraiths. Some were alone, while others were in groups. These wraiths had covered the entire Desolate Market. "You've caused a lot of trouble for the participants of the Battle of Holy Glory," Bifla said. "I don't think so. There's a lot of wraiths, but they're too scattered. If they can focus on attacking a team, it might cause a lot of trouble. But no one's controlling them now, and they're spread across such a large area. Even if a team encounters dozens of wraiths, it might not be a problem. If a single person encountered dozens of wraiths, it might be dangerous. But now the Battle of Holy Glory was mostly in groups. Moreover, they were all elites among spiritualists. No matter how one looked at it, it wouldn't be troublesome for them to deal with tens of vengeful spirits. Some of these vengeful spirits are extremely powerful. Just now, I met a pair of male and female vengeful spirits. Their strength is not to be underestimated. Since I can meet them, the other teams can definitely meet them too." "Is that so? I didn't notice." Chen Zhao indeed didn't notice anything, mainly because a large number of vengeful spirits had been rampaging there. Chen Zhao couldn't tell who was stronger and who was weaker. Chen Zhao was also a bit worried about his team. Just as Bifla said, if their team encountered a few powerful vengeful spirits, they might not be able to defeat them. "I have something to do," Chen Zhao said. "Bye." The supernatural organizations team is over there in that direction. Stunned, Chen Zhao looked back at Bifla. I know you're worried about your team, Bifla said indifferently. Moreover, the entire Barren Land Bazaar is now in chaos because of you. Even if you secretly make a move, no one might notice. Moreover, from the current signs, Celestial Master Zhang and Wendy will be busy and won't have time to pay attention to you. What could possibly happen to them? Isn't it just the seal we opened earlier? The first one, Theodosius I's tomb, wasn't the seal they consciously opened. But the second seal, the sevenfold door in the sewer, was definitely related to them. Do you know what's going on with those two seals? No, but it's probably not a small matter. Whatever, let's not care about them. I'll go see how my men are doing. I saw them on my way here. I think they got into a fight with another team. Did they win or lose? Chen Zhao asked immediately. They're about the same in power. I don't think there'll be a winner, Bifla said. Bifla said, I'll wait for you here. Go take a look at your team, and then come find me. Why? Chen Zhao asked. We don't have to work together. I found the third seal. Are you sure you don't want to take a look? You're not thinking of breaking the third seal, are you? Do you think Zhang isn't busy enough? I'm not planning on breaking the seal. I just want to see if I can help. Even if Bifla said it openly, Chen Zhao didn't think that Bifla was really going to help. Chen Zhao's most optimistic guess was that Bifla was just watching. Would he help solve the problem? If it didn't involve him, he wouldn't help. Chen Zhao had seen through Bifla long ago. Bifla was the same type of person as him. He wouldn't care about things that didn't concern him. If I have time, I'll think about coming and meeting you. With that, Chen Zhao turned and left. Chen Zhao was rather fast. He went in the direction Bifla pointed. In a few minutes, he sensed a few familiar presences. When Chen Zhao found the supernatural organizations team, they were fighting with another team. To be honest, in the past, Chen Zhao had always thought that his team was already the top. But in the Battle of Holy Glory, he'd seen too many outstanding teams and genius spiritualists. The supernatural organizations team didn't have a clear advantage among them. Even Gaia, who was the most powerful of the 10, didn't stand out here. There were too many geniuses here. Chen Zhao watched the battle between the two teams. If it was just a battle like this, Chen Zhao wouldn't help no matter who won. He didn't bring his team here to help them win. Instead, he wanted to prove their strength. Gaia had already transformed into a dragon. Her opponent was a spiritualist with the bloodline of a magical beast, a hill giant. In terms of size, Gaia's infant draconic dragon was clearly inferior to his opponent's hill giant. But Gaia wasn't without an advantage. She could fly. Her opponent couldn't compare. Chen Zhao looked at the other side of the battlefield. Jalanash and another elementalist were fighting. Their magic systems were similar. Their elements were similar too. Their magic power was similar too. So it was hard to tell who would win. Both were like magic cannons. They kept shooting spells at each other from a distance. Looks like my worries were unnecessary, Chen Zhao murmured. They can already take care of themselves. Chapter 2259. Just as the two sides were fighting fiercely, a third team entered the fray. Let's go. There's a bunch of terrifying guys. The third team was not here to start a fight. They were running for their lives, with hundreds of wraiths following behind them. The hundreds of wraiths were not to be underestimated. Each of them was extremely ferocious. If it were an ordinary spiritualist, a few of them would probably be able to take down one of them. If it were these top-notch spiritualists, each of them could deal with a dozen of them. But no matter how strong they were, they could not deal with hundreds of them at the same time. These wraiths were mixed together because they were similar in strength. Their remaining IQ allowed them to understand that if they fought alone, they would most likely be annihilated. This was the wolf effect of living creatures. If an individual's strength was not enough to ensure their safety, they would choose to gather together. When the external threat disappeared, they would start killing each other again. Quantitative change led to qualitative change. This applied to wraiths as well. When they approached, the two teams could not help but stop fighting. Everyone had a solemn expression. In an instant, everyone was swaying in the torrent formed by the wraiths. No one could face such a large number of wraiths alone. It could be said that with such a large number of wraiths, it was not impossible to block them if one had prepared a defensive line in advance and had a certain level of strength. But now they were completely unprepared, and it came so suddenly. When faced with the large number of wraiths, they were all flustered. With Gaia's fiery temper, she directly spewed a dragon's breath at the wraiths in her young dragon form. The dragon's breath directly ignited more than 10 wraiths, who wailed and screamed in pain. But Gaia's attack did not bring about any strategic results. Instead, it attracted more wraiths to attack. Those wraiths directly pounced on Gaia. 1, 2, 3. In the beginning, Gaia could still directly flap her wings and limbs to slap the evil wraiths away. But as more and more wraiths came, she was unable to withstand them, and was directly pushed to the ground. The wraiths frantically tore at her body. Just then, Norma's reinforcements arrived. A nightmare beast stepping on green flames stepped on the air and came over. This nightmare beast with green flames was Norma's transformation. The hellfire burning on its body made it difficult for the vengeful spirits to approach. When the shapeshifter landed beside Gaia, it stomped its front hooves heavily on the ground, and a circle of green flames spread out. It ignited the vengeful spirits on Gaia's body and forced the surrounding vengeful spirits away. However, the nightmare that Norma had transformed into wasn't invincible. She had to consume a lot of magic power to maintain the burning of hellfire. Fortunately, at this time, the others also came over. They had all gathered here after killing their way out of the encirclement. Although the 10 of them had formed a temporary battle line in a panic, they were still able to hold their ground. However, they were teammates to begin with. They knew each other's strength and fighting style. Therefore, their teamwork was quite skillful. At the very least, it was much easier than when they fought alone. Chen Zhao observed in the dark. Just now, he could not help but want to make a move. Fortunately, they all persevered. The front line formed by the 10 of them was slowly breaking away from the vengeful spirits. These vengeful spirits also bullied the weak and feared the strong. Sensing that the supernatural organization was not easy to deal with, he immediately changed his target. The people from the supernatural organization weren't kind enough to save their former enemy. They quickly left the Wraith battlefield and escaped. However, the other team and the team that had escaped didn't fight for long either. The vengeful spirits' main target didn't seem to be them. They seemed to be gathering in a certain area. It wasn't just this group. In the distance, another group of vengeful spirits was also heading in that direction. Chen Zhao thought for a moment, and then looked at the supernatural organization's team. It seemed that they had improved a lot. Of course, this improvement wasn't just in strength. In addition, their combat experience and their coordination had been greatly improved. It seemed that they could at least ensure their own safety. Chen Zhao also relaxed a little. He'd only planned to come and see their current situation. The information he'd gotten was good, so he didn't need to pay attention all the time. This battle of the Holy Glory was far more exciting than he'd imagined. Many spiritualists with ulterior motives had snuck in. Each of them had their own plans here. Some were just playing small games. Others weren't born to keep a low profile. Suddenly, Baifla appeared beside Chen Zhao. "You followed me?" Chen Zhao turned his head and glanced at Baifla. "No, I knew you'd go this way. I thought of it on the spur of the moment." "How could you guess?" "You're like me. We're afraid of trouble and like to watch." "Who's like you?" Chen Zhao's face darkened and he ignored Baifla. "Do you know what's attracting these vengeful spirits?" Baifla asked. "No." Chen Zhao sounded nonchalant, but he was secretly spreading out his domain. He wanted to find out what was ahead. Soon, Chen Zhao discovered a huge object. It couldn't be called a living thing, because it wasn't an organism in the common sense. It was a huge stone beast. It was more than 200 meters tall, and weighed more than 100,000 tons. It clearly wasn't an ordinary beast or a magical beast, but it wasn't a puppet or an artificial being either. It couldn't be controlled by others. It had its own soul. From its appearance, it looked like a huge wild boar. It was the one that had attracted countless vengeful spirits. After it attracted the vengeful spirits, it would use its nose to sniff them. Then it would absorb large amounts of vengeful spirits. Where did this thing come from? How come I didn't notice it before? Baifla couldn't figure it out either. With their senses, There was no reason they couldn't notice such a huge stone beast. Most spiritualists couldn't do anything to this kind of super monster. But the stone beast wasn't interested in the nearby spiritualists. It was only interested in vengeful spirits. It moved at a seemingly slow speed. At the same time it hummed. Just then, Zhang Tianyi and Wendy arrived. Zhang Tianyi's expression was serious. "Wendy, what's going on?" The eye of the seal of autumn is called the suppressor. It used to maintain its power by sacrificing souls, and then maintain the seal for a long time. But in the past 200 years, because of the information gap, it hasn't received any sacrifices. Now, it's awakened by the large amount of vengeful spirits outside. Chapter 2260. In other words, the suppressor is the seal itself? Zhang Tianyi asked. We don't have to attack it. It won't attack the living, but it can't go too far away from the seal, Wendy said with a serious expression. It is now moving away from the sealed land. I now understand the intentions of the 10 villains. They deliberately released so many vengeful spirits to wake up the suppressor, and then lure it away from the sealed land. Zhang Tianyi also thought of this possibility. Perhaps even Scythe himself did not expect that his death would accidentally trigger this situation. He had died a worthy death. As the leader of the 10 villains, he died in Chen Zhao's hands before he could even be used. He felt wronged. If he hadn't attacked Chen Zhao first, he would have died. If he hadn't attacked Chen Zhao first, Chen Zhao might not have killed him first. At the same time, AI Nancy and the others in another direction were also surprised. They'd found Sickle this time, so that he could use the vengeful spirits he was best at to lure the suppressor out, and then lure it out of the seal. They didn't expect Sickle to still be able to use his original abilities after his death. I didn't expect Sickle's death to have such an effect. A relieved smile appeared on AI Nancy's face. Sickle wasn't their leader. In fact, they weren't even partners. Sickle was actually hired by them, like Nightmare Leopard, who was ranked 7th among the 10 villains. To put it bluntly, Sickle was just a flag. But Sickle's death still caused a huge loophole in their plan. They'd thought that their plan was going to fail. They didn't expect that even though Sickle was dead, the vengeful spirits he'd controlled still completed his mission. Now Wendy and Zhang Tianyi had a headache. Stop the suppressor? That would be the same as attacking it. The suppressor wouldn't attack the living, but that didn't mean it was a good kid. Zhang Tianyi evaluated the suppressor's strength. Very strong. But that was it. If they really fought, he was confident that he could blast this 100,000-ton beast into pieces within 10 minutes. But the problem now was that the suppressor was the key to the seal. If he killed it, it would be equivalent to personally undoing the seal. But if he ignored it, it wouldn't attack the living. However, it would be attracted by the vengeful spirit and leave the area of the seal. Once it left the range of the seal, it would be no different from breaking the seal. Wend, do you have a way to restrain its actions without killing it? It can't be helped. As the core of the seal of autumn, the suppressor is immune to most spells and binding spells. In other words, we can only fight it head-on. Yes. Wenda nodded solemnly. I'll try and see if I can drive it back, Zhang Tianyi said. He did not have much confidence. If this was a magical beast that was afraid of death, Zhang Tianyi could use his unparalleled strength to directly threaten it. However, the suppressor was different. It was not a magical beast. At the same time, it was not a living being. It had a soul but no feelings. Therefore, Zhang Tianyi wasn't sure if he could scare it. Zhang Tianyi's figure moved and floated down in front of the suppressor. Suppressor, return to your post. You shouldn't leave your post, Zhang Tianyi said righteously. But the only response he got was the suppressor's giant claw. The suppressor wasn't attacking him. It was just walking normally. Seeing that he couldn't communicate with the suppressor, Zhang Tianyi's face darkened. Seems like I can only take action. Purple Cloud Lightning Archaic Sword. A bolt of purple lightning descended from the sky and landed in front of Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi reached out and grabbed. The purple lightning turned into a purple sword. Zhang Tianyi touched the purple sword. The sword's edge shone with a purple luster. The suppressor saw Zhang Tianyi's imposing aura and opened its mouth to spit out a blue torrent at Zhang Tianyi. The suppressor devoured countless vengeful spirits and what it released was also a soul attack. However, it was different from the scythe, which could only use the basic vengeful spirit charge. The blue torrent that the suppressor spat out was a high-level torrent of souls. Its power was incomparable to a normal vengeful spirit charge. Zhang Tianyi saw the torrent coming straight at him, but he didn't dodge. He swung the purple sword in a circle, formed a hand seal, and pointed at the torrent of souls. The purple sword released a purple bolt of lightning, and directly collided with the torrent of souls. In an instant, a purple and blue ring of light exploded in the sky. The rainbow light was more dazzling than any magic spell. The surrounding teams that had been attracted by the vengeful spirits, and the suppressor's huge body, were all mesmerized by the dazzling rainbow light. It was powerful and dazzling, frightening and dispiriting. The torrent of souls was crushed by the purple lightning. However, the purple lightning didn't stop. It still charged at the suppressor with unstoppable power. Boom! With a loud sound, the purple lightning struck the suppressor's head. The suppressor was instantly knocked to the ground. The moment the huge body fell, the impact produced directly shook the entire street into ruins. But soon the suppressor stood up again. Old Zhang is indeed strong. Chen Zhao watched Zhang Tianyi and the suppressor fight from afar. It was his first time seeing Zhang Tianyi fight so seriously. He used at least half of his strength. Even Chen Zhao wasn't sure that he could take that attack unscathed. The purple lightning seemed to be a lightning spell, but Chen Zhao vaguely felt danger. Anyway, Chen Zhao didn't dare to take that attack head-on with his body. Moreover, the old man definitely hadn't used his full strength. Chen Zhao felt that if he did, he really wouldn't be able to take one attack. Of course, Chen Zhao was sure that old Zhang wouldn't be able to take one of his punches either. Zhang Tianyi didn't know that Chen Zhao was nearby, nor did he know what Chen Zhao was thinking. Gray Style 9 Techniques, Demon Vanquishing 1000 Tricks. Zhang Tianyi used another technique. He casually tossed the purple sword, and it turned back into purple lightning. Then the purple lightning turned into a huge dharma. It didn't seem real, but it was filled with majesty. The dharma held one hand in front of its chest, and raised the other in a slashing posture. Break! The dharma's right arm chopped down vertically. Hiss! In an instant, the ground was torn apart, and the cracks extended for thousands of meters. So strong, Chen Zhao exclaimed. Baifla nodded with a serious expression. Baifla was also a sect leader. In the past, Baifla hadn't even reached Shangqing state. Now he was also a Shangqing state master. But the difference between him and Zhang Tianyi wasn't that big. Zhang Tianyi really had a lot to brag about. Chapter 2261. As the publicly recognized top human expert in the supernatural world, Zhang Tianyi's strength didn't need to be recognized by others. But not many people had actually seen him fight. There were many people who had witnessed this battle, but those lucky enough to see it were also in danger. Not everyone had the right to watch the battle between Zhang Tianyi and the suppressor. The battle between the two was like a raging fire. Even Chen Zhao and Baifla were amazed by the scene. They were amazed by Zhang Tianyi's strength. Even if Zhang Tianyi didn't use his full strength, it was still shocking. Although Zhang Tianyi had displayed a powerful and overwhelming strength, it was not enough to stop him. But he was facing an opponent that didn't know fear or pain. The suppressor wasn't afraid of Zhang Tianyi at all. Even though it was forced to retreat, it still attacked Zhang Tianyi without hesitation. Celestial Master Zhang, it absorbed a lot of vengeful spirits. As long as the spiritual power isn't used up, it'll keep fighting. Wendy reminded Zhang Tianyi from afar. Zhang Tianyi had a headache. He'd seen many enemies like this. It claimed that it wouldn't fall as long as it had power. In fact, it wasn't hard to kill it before its power was used up. There was a very simple way, and that was to shatter one's bones. Zhang Tianyi happened to know many ways to achieve this goal, but he couldn't do that to the suppressor. This was what gave him the biggest headache. Baifla, if it were you, how would you deal with that big monster? Celestial Master Zhang doesn't seem to want to kill the monster. He probably just wants to stop it. If it were me, I could only destroy it at most, not stop it. Baifla glanced at Chen Zhao. This should be the enemy you're best at dealing with, right? Indeed, Chen Zhao didn't deny this. He liked to deal with enemies that focused on physical attacks the most. But he wouldn't attack. What happened here had nothing to do with him. Bifla thought the same. He could watch, but he couldn't look for trouble. Under Zhang Tiany's powerful attacks, the suppressor still moved freely. No matter how Zhang Tiany destroyed its rock-like shell, it would recover in a short time. There were too many vengeful spirits for it to absorb and devour. Zhang Tiany's attack didn't slow it down for long. The suppressor was already at the edge of the seal's range. Zhang Tiany shouted, "Thousand tricks vanquishes the devil." Zhang Tiany's Dharma power condensed again, and he shouted again, "Shoulder throw." The Dharma idol grabbed suppressor and threw him over his shoulder. The 100,000-ton body of the suppressor crashed into the ground several hundred meters away. The earth was shaking, and even the space of the entire wasteland market was shaking. Everyone was dumbfounded by the fall. Bifla, have you watched Ultraman? The current scene looked like Ultraman beating up a small monster. Zhang Tiany was also panting heavily. He was forced to use the Dharma idol of heaven and earth as a wrestling technique. The Dharma idol of heaven and earth could be used for physical attacks. However, the heaven and earth Dharma idol only had a physical form, so the power of the spells released through the heaven and earth Dharma idol could increase by several times, or even dozens of times. However, if one were to use the aspect of heaven and earth to launch a physical attack, it would consume several times the caster's magic power. Zhang Tiany was in the Shangqing realm. Even if he used the heaven and earth avatar to wrestle, his magic power would recover quickly. However, the consumption was greater than the recovery. It was like a long-range attacker fighting close combat with someone else. Zhang Tiany was a standard long-range attacker. It wasn't that he didn't know how to fight close combat, but that his level was lowered by several levels. Even so, he could still use the Dharma idol to suppress the suppressor. From this, one could see how terrifying his true strength was. As a pure melee fighter, Chen Zhao was also astonished when he saw Zhang's move. In terms of effect, Chen Zhao could do it too. With his strength, throwing the suppressor over his shoulder was a piece of cake for him. Even if the suppressor was 10 times heavier, he could still do it. However, Zhang Tiany was clearly different. Everyone had their own specialties. Zhang Tiany and Chen Zhao were two extreme examples. Of course, the two of them also had certain achievements in other fields. However, they were still weak. When the suppressor got up again, Zhang Tiany used the Dharma idol to throw it over his shoulder again. He threw it back to the center of the seal. Zhang Tiany panted even more and mumbled, "I can't do this. If this continues, I'll really die." If only that bastard Chen Zhao was here. He wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Wait. Chen Zhao was in the desolate market now. He'd caused such a big commotion here. There was no reason for him not to come and watch. Zhang Tiany floated in the air and suddenly made a hand seal. Heavenly Eye. Instantly, a vertical eye split open in the wrinkles between Zhang Tiany's brows. This Heavenly Eye was a rather common spell in the Wuxia supernatural world. However, Zhang Tiany's Heavenly Eye was an advanced version. Normal Heavenly Eye wouldn't open the Heavenly Eye. They could only see a trace of karma. However, Zhang Tiany's Heavenly Eye directly opened the third Heavenly Eye. Through the amount of magical power used, he could see the result he wanted to see directly. However, it wasn't easy to find Chen Zhao. After all, Chen Zhao wasn't weaker than him. In terms of magical power alone, Chen Zhao was stronger. Zhang Tiany immediately felt his magical power depleting rapidly. But an instant later he saw Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao wasn't far from him, and the desolate market wasn't big. Although Zhang Tiany's consumption was great, it wasn't as great as he'd imagined. If this was the outside world, Zhang Tiany would probably lose half his life to use the Heavenly Eye to find Chen Zhao. Fuck, this bastard is really watching. Zhang Tiany cursed as he looked at the suppressor who'd stood up again. Outside the battlefield, Chen Zhao also felt Zhang Tiany's actions. We've been discovered. Let's go. That old man wants a scapegoat, Chen Zhao said. We can't leave. Bifla shook his head. Can he stop me if I want to leave? Chen Zhao didn't believe it. But the next moment he had to believe it. In the distance, Zhang Tiany cast another spell. Borrow the power of heaven and earth. Move the stars. Come here. Whoosh! Instantly, Chen Zhao felt the world spin, and he disappeared from Bifla's sight. When he looked again, he realized he'd appeared in the middle of the battlefield. Zhang Tianyi was gone. There was only the suppressor before him. Celestial Master, hello. Bifla looked at Zhang Tianyi, who'd suddenly switched places with Chen Zhao, and bowed respectfully. Hey Bifla, I haven't seen you in a few days, and you've actually broken through the last step. You must have learned it from that kid, right? Yes. Thank you for your guidance, Celestial Master. Bifla nodded with a smile. Old man, you're not very kind. Since I gave you some pointers, you should return the favor no matter what. Why don't you come over and help me out while I'm fighting so hard? Zhang Tianyi said indignantly. Didn't you already pull Chen Zhao into the battlefield? That's not because of your help. It's because I'm more skilled. But Celestial Master, you seem to have forgotten to tell him to go easy. Chapter 2262. Oh no. Zhang Tianyi felt like his head was going to explode. He turned around and charged toward Chen Zhao and the suppressor. The distance was not far, probably less than a kilometer. At this moment, Zhang Tianyi and the Bliss World felt an unprecedented distance. Chen Zhao had also recovered from the shock. He also saw Zhang Tianyi hurriedly turning around. Chen Zhao opened his mouth in Zhang Tianyi's direction. Zhang Tianyi couldn't hear Chen Zhao's words, but he could still read Chen Zhao's lips. You want me to be your fighter, right? Then I'll do as you wish. Chen Zhao turned to look at the suppressor. Dark assimilation. Instantly, Chen Zhao's body was covered in a layer of darkness. Both Chen Zhao and Bifla could tell that Zhang Tianyi had been showing mercy to the suppressor. Given Zhang Tianyi's strength, the suppressor would have been slain long ago. Therefore, after fighting for so long, it wasn't that Zhang Tianyi couldn't kill the suppressor, but that he couldn't. However, it was a limitation for Zhang Tianyi. But there were no restrictions on Chen Zhao. Zhang Tianyi didn't even have time to be proud of himself. At this moment, he was already filled with regret. He really shouldn't have pulled Chen Zhao into his possession so recklessly. Chen Zhao wasn't him. Chen Zhao had no sense of responsibility or civility. It was simply a daydream to hope that he would accommodate her. Zhang Tianyi was already halfway there, but he stopped in the next moment. Because he knew it was too late. Chen Zhao had already made his move. Go to hell. Terrifying power burst out from Chen Zhao's body. With unparalleled might, it poured into the body of the suppressor. It started from the suppressor's head and spread to his entire body. The suppressor was instantly destroyed and obliterated. Chen Zhao, do you know what you did? Didn't you want me to kill this big monster? Chen Zhao pretended to be confused. If I wanted to kill it, would I need you? Zhang Tianyi criticized Chen Zhao indignantly. The most hateful thing was that Chen Zhao clearly knew everything, but he had to play dumb in front of her. You didn't tell me anything. Are you blind? Chen Zhao's face darkened. Don't take advantage of your seniority. Zhang Tianyi was stunned for a moment, his face flushed with anger. Unfortunately, he didn't have a position to take now. He had forcefully dragged Chen Zhao into the battlefield without discussing it with him. This old man is a magnanimous person. I won't argue with you. Zhang Tianyi snorted stubbornly and turned to leave. More importantly, he couldn't do anything to Chen Zhao. Fight with Chen Zhao. The best outcome would be a lose-lose situation. The worst result was that he would be hung up and beaten. Zhang Tianyi knew his own strength, but he also knew how strong Chen Zhao was. That was why he wasn't confident. In particular, Chen Zhao's boundless vitality and almost unbreakable defense were especially strong. All of Zhang Tianyi's attacks were halved. Zhang Tianyi had also thought about how to deal with Chen Zhao if they fought. After much thought, the best way to deal with Chen Zhao was to seal him. However, a human seal was too difficult. Sealing had a tendency. If it was sealing an enemy of a certain attribute, the effect would be very good. For example, an enemy of the darkness or holy attribute could be sealed for hundreds, or even thousands of years. However, humans were neutral. They could be dark, or they could be holy. Therefore, the tendency of sealing spells would be greatly reduced. The effect of sealing other species for 100 years might only be a few years or decades for humans. If it was a normal person or Tongliao city, they would starve to death after a few years. But Zhang Tianyi was very sure that it was useless against Chen Zhao. Perhaps Chen Zhao would starve in the seal, but he definitely wouldn't starve to death. When Chen Zhao came out of the seal, It would be a great disaster for Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi knew that he couldn't outlive Chen Zhao. With his junior strength and potential, he basically couldn't beat Chen Zhao. Therefore, Zhang Tianyi really didn't want to turn against Chen Zhao. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't want to turn against Zhang Tianyi either. The old man had too many dirty tricks. Who knew when he would be tricked? They were both wary of each other. Just then, a majestic pillar of light suddenly shot out from the huge pit where the suppressor had been hiding. The pillar of light soared into the sky, and surging energy poured out from the seal. Three seals have been opened. AI Nancy and the others were very excited. There was only one seal left. Their plan was unfolding in a way that exceeded their expectations, but they were unexpectedly back to square one. Theodosius I's tomb, the sevenfold door in the sewers, and the almost invincible suppressor. AI Nancy, don't you think it's strange? Opening each seal is part of our plan, but the process of opening each seal deviates from our plan, the Black Soul said. AI Nancy, who had been very excited a moment ago, fell into silence the next moment. The current situation seemed to have reached their expectations, but the process was rather strange. One accident, two accidents, and the third was still an accident. With so many accidents added together, it wasn't an accident anymore. What are you trying to say? There's someone or a group of people who know our entire plan. They're using our plan to carry out their own plan. Their goal is very likely to also open the seal and obtain God's remains. You're saying that we have competitors. Maybe it's even worse, the Black Soul said. The Black Soul said, even we wouldn't dare to plot against Celestial Master Zhang. But the other party's plan included Celestial Master Zhang. They're either ignorant and fearless, or they have the confidence to do so. Moreover, we're still in the open. Then what should we do? AI Nancy turned to look at the Black Soul. The joy he had felt before had completely vanished. AI Nancy didn't like this feeling. She didn't like being used and manipulated. There are two choices. One is to continue with the plan and wait until the fourth seal is opened, so that we can obtain God's remains first. The second choice is to give up all the plans and sabotage the operation. The other party may be stronger than us. Perhaps all our actions are being watched by the other party. Instead of being manipulated by others, it's better to directly sabotage the entire plan. If we can't get it, we won't let the other party get it. No, AI Nancy immediately rejected. I've been lurking around Wen for so many years, and the implementation of the plan is now nearing its end. You want me to give up the plan? I don't have that much time to waste. And so far, all the guesses are just your guesses. They haven't been confirmed yet. Chapter 2263. Zhang Tianyi was pissed. Chen Zhao was even more pissed. He'd been dragged into the battle for no reason. However, he vaguely sensed an unusual aura. As for where this feeling came from, he couldn't say either. Bifla greeted Zhang Tianyi from afar, and then left with Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao, what's wrong? Still mad at Celestial Master Zhang? No, I don't know if it's my imagination, but I feel something weird. We're both spiritualists. If we can feel it, then it can't be an illusion, Bifla said. What did you feel? I can't tell. I just feel that it's not coordinated, but I can't tell what it is. That's normal. Spiritualists are very sensitive, but some senses are just flashes of light, so it's hard to explain what it means. Then how can I be sure of what I feel? I can't help you with that. I feel that it's too mysterious. Also, it's up to the person to capture the flash of light. Others can't help either. Is there no way at all? I can't. But I don't know if Celestial Master Zhang has a way. Chen Zhao was a prideful person. He definitely wouldn't turn around and ask Zhang Tianyi for help. Celestial Master, what's wrong? Is it because that person killed the suppressor? Wendy looked at Zhang Tianyi, who had a serious expression. He'd seen the argument and conflict just now. That person had come with Bifla. And he knew Zhang Tianyi. It should be the Chen Zhao mentioned before. That terrifyingly powerful man. And he'd indeed displayed unparalleled power. Other than Zhang Tianyi, he'd never met anyone who could kill the suppressor in one move. But that person had done it. That kind of domineering power was something he'd never seen before. No. Zhang Tianyi shook his head. It's because I suddenly lost my mind. What do you mean? Wendy asked, confused. I know that bastard Chen Zhao too well, Zhang Tianyi said. No matter what, I would never drag him into the battle when I'm facing an enemy I can't kill. But that's exactly what I did just now. Wenda frowned. You mean you're being controlled? Not control, but left and right. I don't understand. Is there anyone in this world who can control your mind? You may not have encountered some strange spells. Some spells are hard to detect, extremely difficult to defend against, or even impossible to defend against. And I suspect that I was hit by such a spell. What spell? Even you are unable to defend against it. In China, there is a system called the deadly occult door. Zhang Tianyi said, taking life doesn't mean killing or taking more of your life, but controlling your actions and controlling your fate. You're talking about the puppet technique, right? How could you be affected by the puppet technique? Of course it's not the puppet technique. The puppet technique is not even worth mentioning when compared to this life-taking technique. Zhang Tianyi paused. Everyone's words, actions, and decisions are similar to throwing darts. Whatever your dart hits on the target, you will react accordingly. The difference is that some actions have a larger area on the target, while some actions have a smaller area on the target. Do you understand what I'm saying? Wenda nodded. Zhang Tianyi's explanation was easy to understand. Plus, he was quick-witted, so he easily understood Zhang Tianyi's meaning. But this life-taking technique expands the target area that originally represented a small probability action into a high probability action. Wenda's eyes widened in surprise. Even for a veteran of the supernatural world like him, this was the first time he had heard of such a strange, or even strange spell. Celestial Master, you mean someone cast a spell on you? I'm not sure right now, Zhang Tianyi said. Logically, I wouldn't make such a mistake, but I just had to do such a stupid thing, so I can't help but suspect that I was hit by this spell. I still find it a little hard to believe. Does that mean that once you master this spell, you can do whatever you want? Wenda shuddered at the thought of the consequences. If the other party controlled Zhang Tianyi and killed him, or committed some heinous crime, who could stop them? Zhang Tianyi rubbed his forehead. It's not as scary as you think. First of all, this kind of spell has certain requirements for the caster. Secondly, it can't be detected. Moreover, when this kind of spell is used on you and me, the effect is greatly reduced. Moreover, it needs to make use of a small, almost negligible possibility in my heart. Even if this possibility is expanded, it will almost never happen. But it can still happen, right? For example, because I had a dispute with you in the past, and then wanted to kill you at a certain moment. It just happened to be used by my enemy to increase this possibility. It was originally a 1 in a million possibility, but then it was doubled by the other party, becoming a 1 in 500,000 possibility. Do you need to worry about this probability? Have we had a dispute before? How come I don't remember? Celestial Master Zhang, I've always admired you very much, Wenda said hurriedly, as if Zhang Tianyi really could kill him. Zhang Tianyi rolled his eyes. Okay, enough nonsense. Now I need to confirm whether I really was hit by this spell or not. How can you be sure? Asked Wenda. He didn't have any good ideas in this regard. After all, this was the first time he had heard of this kind of spell. Just thinking about it made him feel scared. Do you have chicken blood, cat whiskers, cow's eyeballs, and sheep's dung in your lab? Wenda still didn't understand. These are all low-level materials. The so-called low-grade materials were things that could be easily obtained by ordinary people. There was no difficulty in obtaining them. However, these low-level materials could only be used to cast the most basic and common spells. In his opinion, Zhang Tianyi wouldn't use those low-level spells. In his opinion, Zhang Tianyi would only use those kinds of high-level and difficult spells. He couldn't possibly use those low-level spells. Zhang Tianyi glanced at Wenda's expression and more or less guessed what he was thinking. For me, there's no such thing as high or low spells, only useful and useless spells. For example, the spell I'm going to use, Nurturing. Nurturing? What a strange name. This spell not only has a strange name, but its effect is also very strange. It can make people lose their desire for an instant. Of course, it can instantly calm them down, but it can only last for 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, the effect will disappear. Wenda's face was full of confusion. The effect of this spell was indeed strange, and could even be said to be meaningless. And the duration was also very short. What was the use of this spell? And what did it have to do with Zhang Tiany's current situation? Chapter 2264. This nurturing technique is also known as the heaven nurturing technique. It's originally used to concentrate and calm one's qi and consolidate one's foundation. Basically, it's used on ordinary people. Of course, it can also be used on spirit controllers, but it's meaningless for spirit controllers. Zhang Tiany said, however, there's another characteristic of nurturing. The user can't have any traces of other spells on their body. In game terms, as long as there's a buff on the body, no matter if it's a buff or a debuff, nurturing can't coexist. Hearing Zhang Tiany's explanation, Wenda finally understood. However, although the effect of this nurturing spell was weak, its conditions were very overbearing. In layman's terms, the human body was a computer, and these spells were the software. However, to install the nurturing spell software, all other software had to be uninstalled. Of course, it didn't matter to ordinary people, because ordinary people wouldn't have any buffs on their bodies. However, many spiritualists would habitually apply some buffs on their bodies. These buffs were all compatible. There was no rule that one couldn't apply another after being applied. When they returned to Wenda's laboratory, Kelly and Evelyn were waiting there. They wanted to go out with Zhang Tiany and Wenda. However, because of the urgency of the situation, Zhang Tiany and Wenda didn't have time to drag their feet. And they didn't dare to go out alone. The wasteland market outside was too dangerous for them. Therefore, they could only stay in the laboratory. However, Wenda didn't restrict their movements. In the laboratory, they could go anywhere they wanted. However, they found some fun here. They found the surveillance room. This surveillance room didn't monitor the building they were in, but the entire wasteland market. Here, they could see the entire wasteland market and the battle scenes of all the participants of the Battle of Holy Glory. However, there were hundreds of thousands of surveillance scenes in the entire wasteland market. It wasn't easy for them to find the scenes they wanted to see. However, among the selected scenes, they still found the battle scenes of some of the Battle of Holy Glory participants. The battles of those spiritualists were refreshing and broadened their horizons. After Zhang Tiany and Wenda returned, they immediately came to their side. They knew that they could only survive here if they were obedient. As for the thoughts of revenge they had at the beginning, they had long since disappeared. The more they came into contact with, the more their worldview collapsed. The assassin abilities that they were so proud of in the past did not give them any advantages. Especially when facing a supreme existence like Zhang Tiany, what they felt was powerlessness, humbleness, and insignificance. Zhang Tiany's appearance was that of an old man. However, whenever an enemy that could threaten them appeared, he would transform into a godlike existence. They had never seen what a real god looked like. But in their eyes, Zhang Tiany was a god. Wendy quickly prepared the spellcasting materials for Zhang Tiany. Nurturing was not a difficult spell to begin with. It was a very low-level and simple spell. Wenda watched Zhang Tiany cast the spell and instantly learned it. Zhang Tiany cast the spell on himself, and didn't cast it. I knew it. Zhang Tiany raised his eyebrows. I really did get hit by the life-stealing strange door. Celestial Master, do you have a suspect? Wendy asked. Zhang Tiany shook his head. This life-stealing strange door is treacherous and impossible to guard against. It's my first time seeing it, and I've only heard about it in the past. I don't even know the conditions to cast the spell and trigger it, so how can I have any clues? Nothing at all. I don't have any clues at the moment, but I'm sure that this spell only exists in Wuxia. Most spells or magic, be it in the East or the West, were similar or identical. However, a small portion of them were unique spells, and they were also isolated inheritances. Outsiders might not even have heard of them, let alone practiced them. Zhang Tiany's expression was solemn. An invisible enemy was in the dark. Not only that, but he was also able to make him fall for it without anyone noticing. Anyone else would not be able to relax. Then what do we do now? Wendy was also in a dilemma. To be honest, in terms of strength he wasn't bad. He couldn't compare to Zhang Tianyi, but compared to most spiritualists in the world, he was still in awe of them. However, in terms of schemes he was clearly powerless. He spent most of his thoughts and wisdom on alchemy, so he didn't have any ideas about schemes. Otherwise, Anise wouldn't have been hiding beside him for so many years without him noticing. What if Zhang Tianyi tried it? Not to mention a few years, he would probably know what color Anise's underwear was after a few rounds of contact. Zhang Tianyi fell into deep thought. After a while, his lips curled into a smile. Done. You've thought of a way. Yes. Zhang Tianyi smiled. What do you need me to do? No need. Zhang Tianyi shook his head. Go to the surveillance room and find Chen Zhao. Him. It's the guy you saw before. It wasn't easy to find one person among hundreds of thousands of surveillance images. So, he had to ask Kelly and Evelyn to help. When he left, he was at this location. If he didn't run around randomly, he should be near this area. Search this area and its surroundings. That way we can reduce the range. Zhang Tianyi couldn't confirm Chen Zhao's current location. After all, with Chen Zhao's abilities, he wouldn't even need a minute to go around the barren land bazaar. We found Bifla, but where's Chen Zhao? Where did he go? Zhang Tianyi found Bifla's tracks. He'd thought that Bifla and Chen Zhao would move together. In the end, Chen Zhao wasn't beside Bifla. At the moment Bifla, who was in the surveillance room, had an idea. He gazed at the sky, a thoughtful expression on his face. The feeling of being monitored came very suddenly. In the surveillance room, Zhang Tianyi thought for a while. Continue looking for Chen Zhao. I'll be back soon. With that, Zhang Tianyi left the lab and went straight to Bifla's location. A while later, Zhang Tianyi arrived before Bifla. Celestial Master Zhang, were you monitoring me just now? Yes. Why isn't Chen Zhao beside you? Where did he go? Zhang Tianyi asked. Chapter 2265. Hearing Zhang Tianyi's words, Bifla's expression suddenly turned strange. What's wrong? Don't tell me something happened to him. I don't believe that Shoal would be in trouble. Zhang Tianyi said confidently. Plus, no one in this barren land can harm him. He's gone, Bifla said. What? Zhang Tianyi stared at Bifla dumbfounded. What do you mean gone? He ran away. He didn't run away, Bifla said helplessly. He was probably summoned by someone or some spell. Actually, he was also very confused about this. Chen Zhao had disappeared beside him. He had seen the entire process, but he had no idea what spell it was or who had cast it. Forcefully summoning Chen Zhao away? One had to know that an existence like Chen Zhao would be a catastrophe if he was replaced by a magical beast or magical creature of the same level. The price to summon a magical creature of this level was also very high. It would probably take tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of blood sacrifices, to summon a magical creature of Chen Zhao's level. Chen Zhao was a human. Unless he had a contract with someone, the price to summon him would be even higher. Of course, this was Bifla's conjecture before he knew Chen Zhao's true strength. Summon him away. Are you sure? Zhang Tianyi clearly didn't believe that Chen Zhao would be summoned away. I'm not sure, Bifla said. I'm confused too. Zhang Tianyi sank into deep thought. He knew Chen Zhao better than Bifla. He knew how powerful Chen Zhao was. Summon Chen Zhao. First, destroy a small country, then kill all the people there and sacrifice their lives. And this was under the premise that Chen Zhao accepted the contract. If it were some evil creature or demon, they would definitely be happy to accept the summon. But Chen Zhao wouldn't accept it. Therefore, the price to successfully summon Chen Zhao would be unimaginably high. Because Zhang Tianyi had been through this, he knew the rules of summoning like the back of his hand. That was why he had such an expression of disbelief. The most likely possibility was that he hadn't been summoned away. He had been teleported away. Did Chen Zhao do anything strange before he left? What do you mean? If it's a summoning, the price is too high. In the real world, no one can pay such a high price, so the only possibility is that he was teleported away. Zhang Tianyi said. To teleport Chen Zhao away, one needs to be very powerful. If the other party has the power to teleport Chen Zhao away, then they can fight him head-on. So, the most likely possibility is that Chen Zhao did something that meets the predetermined conditions and was teleported away by force. Bifla thought for a moment, and a strange expression appeared on his face again. We picked up a magic lamp on the road. Is this behavior strange? Zhang Tianyi also revealed a strange expression. Are you sure you're not joking with me? No, I'm serious. Bifla shrugged helplessly. We did pick up a magic lamp, but it's more like a magic tool. Chen Zhao even tried to rub the magic lamp to summon the genie, but there was no reaction. Then he filled the lamp with magic power. While Bifla's words were unimaginable, thinking about it carefully, this behavior and method suited Chen Zhao's personality. If Chen Zhao had picked up such a magic lamp, he wouldn't even consider if it was dangerous or a trap. He would definitely try to summon the genie. That magic lamp is strange, Zhang Tianyi said, frowning. I'm not sure if Chen Zhao being teleported away has nothing to do with the magic lamp. Zhang Tianyi opened the heavenly eye between his brows. After looking around, he said, Chen Zhao's aura still lingers in the barren town. This means that he's still in the barren town. He should be trapped somewhere now. There's a place that can trap him? Bifla was in disbelief. Maybe he's not willing to come out. Zhang Tianyi knew Chen Zhao too well. As long as he was interested in something, he would probably stay. Even if there was a flood outside, he wouldn't care. Also, there are many secrets here that even Winder doesn't know. He's really not responsible enough as a manager, Bifla said. At this moment, a team walked over. They first saw two figures before them, but they couldn't see who they were. So their first reaction was to be on guard. The team approached them carefully. However, when they saw the two people standing there, especially Zhang Tianyi, everyone was stunned for a moment. Celestial Master? Bifla and Zhang Tianyi turned their heads to look at the team that had appeared before them. Zhang Tianyi's gaze fell on the magic lamp in one of their hands. Where did you get that? Zhang Tianyi asked, pointing at the person. Celestial Master. This is the trophy we got when we defeated a cypress beast. The person couldn't help but become nervous. Let me see, Zhang Tianyi said. The person hesitated, but in the end, he still held the magic lamp with both hands and handed it to Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi took the magic lamp and realized that it had already been injected with magic. You guys injected a lot of magic, right? Everyone's expression was somewhat awkward, because all 10 of them had tried to inject magic into the magic lamp. But they had only injected less than a quarter. Of course, one reason was that they hadn't used all their strength. After all, they were in the barren town and participating in the trial of the Battle of Holy Glory. If all their magic was injected, then they were likely to lose their combat effectiveness. Moreover, the amount of mana required for the magic lamp was simply too much. They couldn't pay too much to turn on this magic lamp when they weren't sure of the role of this magic lamp. That's why this magic lamp was in this state. About a quarter of their magic was injected, and they couldn't continue to inject it. And even if they said that all their magic was injected into it, they could only inject 3/4 of the full value at most, which was why they gave up on continuing. Zhang Tianyi directly injected his own magic power into it. The Chinese people called it magic power, and the Westerners called it magic power. In fact, they were essentially the same. The magic lamp that 10 people in the opposite team couldn't fill, Zhang Tianyi filled it directly in an instant. However, what Zhang Tianyi expected did not happen. Chapter 2266. Why isn't there a reaction? Zhang Tianyi turned his head and looked at Bifla. Bifla shrugged. I don't understand either. Celestial Master Zhang, bring the Qingjiang magic lamp to the lab. I'll study it. Wender contacted Zhang Tianyi through the communicator. Zhang Tianyi was helpless. His knowledge in this area was indeed far from Wender's. He brought it back to Wender's lab. Wendy immediately began to examine the magic lamp. How is it? Is there a result? This lamp can also be used to activate teleportation, but there's a condition. Only one mana source can be fully charged to activate the teleportation device. That's simple. Drain the mana you injected earlier, and then inject it again. Don't tell me you can't do it. Of course, but it's not the only condition, Wender said. Wendy said, This is only the final device, not the only one. That is to say, before obtaining this magic lamp, other conditions need to be met. Can you deduce the required conditions? Wender shook his head. No. There's no pattern to these conditions, so I can't deduce them. Then can you activate the teleportation device in another way? Yes, but it needs time, Wender answered. How long? 3 to 5 days. I can't be sure yet. So, even the best result has to be after the second trial. Since I'm missing the previous conditions, I need to complete them in another way. 3 to 5 days is already the most optimistic estimate. Chen Zhao felt his body fall heavily onto the ground. His face was stuck to the smelly sewage on the ground. Chen Zhao wiped the water off his face. He didn't want to know what the sewage was made of. The air was hot and dry. There were many cracks on the ground. Faint red light flashed through the cracks. He seemed to be in the mouth of a volcano. The sky wasn't the sky either. Instead, it was a bottomless, hollowed-out rock layer above his head. There were also many cracks above his head. Lava or rocks fell from them every now and then. It looked like hell, but it wasn't hell. At first, when he'd been summoned, he'd thought that he'd been summoned by a friend from hell. But when he arrived, he realized that it wasn't hell. Chen Zhao kicked off and soared into the air. However, after making an arc in the air, it fell heavily to the ground. What's going on? You can't fly here? Chen Zhao was confused. Closing his eyes, he carefully sensed the surroundings and discovered that the heaven and earth spiritual energy here was extremely abundant. However, there seemed to be some sort of spiritual vortex in the air. Once he used his magic power to rise into the air, his magic power would cause a chain reaction with those spiritual vortexes, causing the balance of flight to be disrupted. What exactly is this place? Chen Zhao was even more confused. At this time, a few screams came from the sky. Then a few figures descended from the sky. That scene was so familiar. He seemed to have fallen in the same way before. Those people were in a rather sorry state, and one of them seemed to have fallen quite heavily. After all, not everyone could take a fall. Those people were treating their companions. They were using holy light magic, which had outstanding healing effects. Soon his companion's injuries were much better. One of the handsome blonde men turned his head and looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao stood where he was. He didn't go far, but he didn't get close either. The blonde man walked toward Chen Zhao. Sir, hello. I'm Matthew from the church. Matthew reached out his hand to show his attitude. Chen Zhao also shook hands with Matthew. Hello. You can call me Chen. Can you explain the current situation? And where is this place? I'm afraid not, Chen Zhao said. I just arrived 3 minutes earlier than you guys. You don't know either? Unfortunately, I can't answer your question. Chen Zhao shrugged. But I picked up a magic lamp and filled it with magic to teleport here. You too? Us too. Matthew raised an eyebrow and couldn't help but look at Chen Zhao. Are you alone? Yes. Seeing that he couldn't get any more information from Chen Zhao, Matthew could only give up for now and start observing the surroundings. This looks like an independent space, Matthew said. No, Chen Zhao said. This isn't an independent space. It should be deep under desolate market. Oh, why? Chen Zhao thought so because he could still vaguely feel Bifla's very faint aura. Judging from Bifla's aura, it should have sensed him too. However, they were too far away and separated by thick rock layers, so they couldn't accurately locate each other. But from all the information, they should be above ground or underground. However, they couldn't be sure how far away they were. With the range of their senses, the only place that could block their senses was probably 10,000 meters, or even deeper underground. Also, some magic should be sealed here. Chen Zhao's senses were forced back bit by bit. In the end, he realized that his senses had completely disappeared. No, it wasn't completely disappeared. More accurately, he was forced to only sense about an inch around him. However, this was no different from completely disappearing. Mr. Chen, you're spacing out. Are you thinking about something? Matthew realized that Chen Zhao didn't answer his question. His expression also looked like his soul was wandering. Nothing. Chen Zhao shook his head. Mr. Chen, you haven't answered my question, Matthew said. We're both spiritualists. Why do you doubt my words? Chen Zhao said disapprovingly. Do I have to tell you my magic and principles? These words left Matthew speechless. However, Matthew was a good person and didn't get angry. Instead, he apologized. Sorry, I was rude. Chen Zhao glanced at Matthew. Are you also participants of the Battle of Holy Glory? Yes, Mr. Chen. You too. Are you a lone ranger? Sort of. Are there only 5 of you left in your team? No, the 5 of us were sent in. Our companions are still outside. For now, Chen Zhao didn't know the current situation. Of course, Matthew and his companions didn't know either. They'd all been summoned. Mr. Chen, do you know how to leave here? No, I don't know anything about this place. Chapter 2267. Orlando, go up and take a look at the surroundings, Matthew said to his companion. As he spoke, a young man about the same age as Matthew leaped into the air. Stunned, Chen Zhao stared at Altador in shock. He can fly. Matthew glanced at Chen Zhao. Is it strange? When you reach a certain level, flying isn't an unattainable dream. Matthew clearly misunderstood Chen Zhao. He thought Chen Zhao was a low-level spiritualist. Chen Zhao was speechless. Why was his flying ability the only one restricted? His senses also seemed to be suppressed by the environment here. What was going on? Matthew's group was clearly weaker than him. But they weren't suppressed. Why was he the only one being suppressed? Moreover, this suppression was from the environment here. It wasn't someone or something. This was the most depressing part for Chen Zhao. If everyone was suppressed together, Chen Zhao would feel better. Or if it was someone targeting him, Chen Zhao could accept it more easily. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin and looked at Orlando, who was flying at an altitude of around 100 meters. Didn't he feel the spiritual vortexes around him? But to Matthew, Chen Zhao's observation of Orlando in the sky was purely an envious look. Just then, a huge pressure descended from the sky and landed on Chen Zhao's head. Bang! Instantly, the ground Chen Zhao was standing on cracked. Matthew and the others jumped to the side in shock. Turning back to look at Chen Zhao, they realized that he was kneeling on the ground. His clothes were tattered, and he looked very pathetic. There was a 3-meter-wide pit around him. Mr. Chen, are you okay? What happened just now? Chen Zhao stood up in a mess. His expression was terrible. He'd been targeted. The environment was targeting him. But why? Why was he being targeted by the environment? What was going on? Chen Zhao's aura started to grow stronger. But the next moment, an even more powerful force descended from the sky and hit Chen Zhao. Boom! Chen Zhao was smashed to the ground by this force. Chen Zhao's figure was imprinted on the originally thick and hard ground. Damn it! What the hell is going on? Matthew and the others looked at Chen Zhao, as if he was the plague. They couldn't dodge in time. They didn't understand what was going on either. It was as if an invisible enemy was attacking him. But they didn't find any trace of the enemy. Chen Zhao raised his head and looked at the sky with a confused expression. He didn't sense anyone's hostility, but he was really being targeted. However, his shadow vision did not discover the enemy hidden in the shadows. If shadow vision didn't find anything, then there was most likely no real enemy. Right now, Chen Zhao could do nothing but curse. He didn't even know where the enemy was. This made Chen Zhao very uncomfortable. The more agitated Chen Zhao was, the more his power exploded uncontrollably. At the same time, an even more terrifying attack fell from the sky. Bang! The ground cracked and Chen Zhao was smashed deep into the ground. Is that guy okay? How could he be fine? Even if that guy didn't die, he wouldn't have many breaths left. At this moment, a hand reached out from the pit. Chen Zhao climbed out of the pit with a sad expression. Looking at the sky, Chen Zhao had mixed feelings. It seemed that as long as he used his power, the attack from the heavens would descend. As for what was going on, he didn't know either. But as long as he held his breath and restrained his aura, the attack would stop. However, once his power exceeded that limit, the attack would descend again. That limit was slightly higher than the early stage of Shangqing. This meant that if a spiritualist in the early stage of Shangqing came here, he wouldn't be suppressed or attacked. If he exceeded this limit, the attack would descend continuously. Chen Zhao fell into deep thought. He didn't have any ideas for now. Mr. Chen, are you okay? Matthew asked Chen Zhao, who had climbed out of the pit. I'm fine. Chen Zhao's smile was bitter and helpless. It didn't feel good. If it was a real enemy, no matter how strong or weak the enemy was, Chen Zhao would at least know how to face it. But now he didn't even know what was going on. Chen Zhao tried his best to calm himself down. If he got angry again, his power would soar again. That boundary might be a realm that others would never be able to touch. But for Chen Zhao now it was too low. If he used a bit more strength, he would touch that limit. So, Chen Zhao had to carefully restrain his power. But Chen Zhao's restrained aura still looked very weak to Matthew. Chen Zhao's face was pale, and his eyes were dim. It seemed that the attack he'd received earlier had seriously injured him. Chen Zhao let out a long breath. The attack just now had been very strong, but it hadn't really hurt Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao could feel that it wasn't the strongest attack released by the world. If he continued to release his power, it was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be an even stronger attack or even harm him. Mr. Chen, everyone in our church knows some healing spells, Matthew said sincerely. Let me help you. Thank you. No need. Chen Zhao wasn't injured, so he didn't need healing. Plus, with his magic resistance, both buffs and debuffs weren't very effective on him. Unless Matthew used a super healing spell, it would be a waste of time and magic. Just then, Altador also landed from the sky. Altador first looked deeply at Chen Zhao, and then walked to Matthew's side. Altador, how is it? Did you find anything? No, Altador answered. This place is very big, even bigger than the desolate market. The elements here are also very violent. Matthew, what do we do now? We know too little information, Matthew said helplessly. Even if you let me make a decision, I don't have any good ideas. For now, we can only choose one direction. With that, Matthew looked at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, do you want to go together? Chen Zhao hadn't shown too much power. However, he'd taken a few strange attacks head-on, which was enough to show that he wasn't weak. Plus, Chen Zhao was injured, so Matthew felt that he could form a good relationship with him. For someone of his status, if there were no accidents, he would definitely have a high status in the future. Right now, he didn't just need to increase his power and level. He also needed to make connections for the future. Chapter 2268. Chen Zhao wasn't injured at all. However, the feeling of going from strong to weak made Chen Zhao feel very weak. It wasn't a physical feeling, but a psychological one. This also caused the others to think that Chen Zhao was injured when they saw him. Mr. Chen, do you really not need a holy light spell? It'll be very effective. Matthew had the intention to rope Chen Zhao in and befriend him. However, the church's teachings also taught him that he couldn't leave Chen Zhao in the lurch. Whether it was for business or personal reasons, Matthew hoped to help Chen Zhao. However, Chen Zhao didn't want to be healed by some holy light spell at all. Thank you for your kindness, but I'm not injured. I'm just weak, not injured, Chen Zhao replied weakly. Fine. Matthew nodded helplessly. If you really need it, tell me at any time. Chen Zhao shrugged. Actually, he'd always been in a good state. Matthew's group of 5, and Chen Zhao's group, didn't have a specific destination. They just chose a direction. After walking for a while, they found an area filled with countless skeletons. The skeletons had completely covered the area. Looking over, they couldn't see the end of the sea of skeletons. Some of the skeletons belonged to humans, some belonged to other creatures, some were big, some were small. In the white sea of skeletons, there were also many weapons stuck in the bones. This place, Matthew frowned. He and his companions were all successors of the church. They all had the power of holy light. Therefore, they were very uncomfortable with this area filled with the aura of death. Chen Zhao didn't like this place either, mainly because it was uncomfortable to walk on the skeletons. Without a doubt, this used to be a Shiraba. Countless living beings fought and killed each other here. In the end, only piles of white bones were left. What exactly is this place? How many people are buried here? It was difficult to even count the number of races that had died here, let alone count the number of the dead. There were too many skeletons of various creatures. If a normal person stepped in here, they'd probably be scared to death. Just then, 10 people appeared in front of them. Those 10 people were obviously from the same team. When the team saw Chen Zhao's group, they immediately stopped. Both sides looked at each other. Neither side attacked blindly. Matthew was confident in his strength, but they were the minority after all. The other party's strength was unknown, and they clearly had the advantage in numbers. If they attacked rashly, they might suffer a great loss. Chen Zhao frowned and turned to look at Matthew. At this moment, Matthew and his companions were in high spirits. This confused Chen Zhao even more. Although he had only just met Matthew, they did not have much interaction. But in her mind, Matthew should be the kind of gentle and refined person. It was completely different from his current temperament. Why did he suddenly become so impulsive when he met the person opposite him? Matthew, what's affecting you? Chen Zhao reminded. Matthew was stunned for a moment, and then he came to his senses. It's the aura that permeates this place. Matthew's expression changed. Alterando fi Paolo Angie. Calm down. Matthew reminded them. When everyone heard Matthew's magical voice, they also woke up from their manic and irritable emotions. Matthew glanced at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, thank you. Aren't you affected? I am, Chen Zhao said. But I still retain my rationality. Actually, it was not that he was completely unaffected. It was because Chen Zhao was personally observing the situation from a higher position. He did not see the 10 people as opponents, so he naturally did not have that high fighting spirit. Therefore, compared to the others, Chen Zhao could control his emotions better. He could also observe others from a bystander's perspective. However, Matthew and the others regained their rationality after Chen Zhao's reminder. But the 10 people opposite them did not get rid of their manic emotions so easily. Everyone, you're also participants of the Holy Glory, right? We'd better calm down now. Matthew recovered his usual calmness and gentleness. He tried to use his attitude to dissolve the other party's hostility and fighting spirit. Hesitation and awkwardness appeared on the faces of the 10 opponents. Their eyes were constantly changing, as if they were having an intense battle in their hearts. But just then, a red figure descended from the sky without any warning, landing directly in the center of the two parties. Amidst the scattered bone fragments and dust, a figure emerged from the path. It was a red-skinned man with a bare chest. His hair stretched back in a bold and vigorous manner. The man held a large axe in one hand and a large sword in the other. His red skin was very abnormal, but he was still human. The red-skinned man panted heavily and grinned. More newcomers. The two parties, who had slowly calmed down, were instantly filled with hostility again. Come, let's fight, the red-skinned man roared. The originally calm Matthew suddenly cast a holy spell. A lightsaber extended from his empty right hand. Purify that evil and unorthodox path. The frenzied battle intent seemed to be emanating from this red-skinned man. His appearance had caused Matthew to lose control. Right now, Matthew was like a Jedi in a star battle. He swung his lightsaber and charged at the red-skinned man. The red-skinned man raised his large sword and blocked Matthew's attack. Matthew somersaulted in the air and pointed his other hand at the red-skinned man. Judgment. A golden light suddenly appeared above the red-skinned man's head and fell straight down. Attacked from above, the red-skinned man knelt on one knee. Matthew steadied himself after the somersault and launched another consecutive spell attack. Judgment. The shadow of an angel holding a long sword appeared behind the red-skinned man. The sword pierced through his chest. The red-skinned man spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood quickly evaporated in the air and turned into smoke. Chen Zhao could see that the smoke contained strong magic power. When the magic smoke spread around, Chen Zhao immediately frowned and took a few steps back. However, the others didn't seem to notice anything wrong with the smoke. They all absorbed it more or less. This was especially so for Matthew, who was the closest to them. The skin on his face was slightly dark red, just like the red-skinned man. Kill him. Give him the righteous judgment. It was as if they didn't see the red lines on Matthew's face. Chen Zhao fell into deep thought. They seemed to be affected by the smoke too. Matthew himself didn't notice it at all. The spells he cast became even more violent. Boiling justice. A burning holy flame appeared on Matthew's lightsaber. Without hesitation, Matthew slashed at the red-skinned man's neck. Chapter 2269. The flaming lightsaber slashed at the red-skinned man's neck. Ah! The red-skinned man screamed in pain. The flaming lightsaber cut into 3 parts. Matthew wanted to go further, but he couldn't go any further. The red-skinned man roared. Large amounts of red smoke spewed out of the cut on his neck. The red-skinned man's body suddenly sank down. At the same time, he raised his right heel and kicked Matthew's chest. Matthew was kicked more than 10 meters away. He vomited a mouthful of blood. Matthew was clearly injured, but his face was flushed. Chen Zhao could clearly see that Matthew had inhaled large amounts of red smoke. The red-skinned man seemed to be the source of the pollution. He kept releasing the red smoke, so Matthew was naturally the first to be affected. The others were also affected. Chen Zhao was the only one who wasn't affected. Chen Zhao suddenly focused. This feeling was very similar to Cui Xian's domain power. They both affected one's emotions. Chen Zhao seemed to be affected. However, as long as one was rational enough, they wouldn't be controlled. Moreover, with his previous experience, Chen Zhao was even more familiar with emotional attacks. The red-skinned man was heavily injured. Blood and red smoke were still seeping out of the cut on his neck. Whoosh! Suddenly the red-skinned man howled at the sky. He looked like a wolf in the forest. What's he doing? Is he calling for companions like a wolf? The person who'd spoken laughed. But the next moment his laughter stopped abruptly. Oh no! He's really calling for companions. Just then the ground nearby suddenly bulged. Another red-skinned man stood up from the ground. Before anyone could react, another red-skinned woman jumped down from the top of a giant beast skeleton. She seemed to have been hiding there for a long time. Even Chen Zhao's senses were suppressed, so he didn't notice the woman. Moreover, the woman's figure was taller than the others of the same species. She didn't look very sturdy, but she gave off a strong sense of oppression. Moreover, her hair was very thick, or more accurately, thicker than anyone else's. Chen Zhao turned to look at the other red-skinned men. They were also very hairy. However, the woman's hair was the thickest. It was probably 2 or 3 times thicker than normal people's, and it was all tied behind her head. Under the call of the first red-skinned man, a total of 23 companions came to his aid. They all had red skin and thick hair. Matthew's injuries were not serious, and after giving himself a simple holy light nourishment, his injuries had already recovered by 80 to 90%. However, when he looked at the red-skinned woman in the lead, his face showed some hesitation. Chen Zhao looked at the red-skinned woman. She was completely naked. Could it be that Matthew was tempted by her beauty? The red-skinned woman wasn't ugly, but she was 2 heads taller than Matthew. She was estimated to be about 4 meters tall. If the 2 of them get together, Chen Zhao rubbed his chin as lewd images appeared in his mind. Then he shuddered. That scene was truly unbearable. Suddenly, a wave of coldness came straight at him. Chen Zhao suddenly woke up, but the attack was already in front of him. Chen Zhao sat on the ground. The attack was too sudden. Chen Zhao's senses were also sealed, so he didn't realize it until it was right in front of him. In everyone's eyes, they only thought that Chen Zhao was weak and lacked battle experience. Chen Zhao's absent-mindedness and strange expression proved their guesses. Thankfully, someone beside him helped Chen Zhao out. Chen Zhao remembered that the woman was called Angie. Angie looked down at Chen Zhao, who was sitting on the ground in a sorry state. You shouldn't be absent-minded on the battlefield, Angie said arrogantly. It'll cost you your life, especially when you're not very strong. You have to be more careful of all your enemies. Chen Zhao was absent-minded again. This woman's attitude was exactly the same as his past self. Basically, when he had the advantage, he would teach others or show off. However, Chen Zhao had never thought that he would be taught a lesson by others one day. Bang! An extremely loud sound boomed in Chen Zhao's ears. Following it was a huge impact. Angie stood before Chen Zhao again. I said, don't be absent-minded. Chen Zhao looked up at Angie, and then at the person who had attacked him. It was the red-skinned woman. The first time she had attacked him was a surprise attack. She had charged at him without any warning. The second time, she had spat out a fireball. The red-skinned woman's 2 attacks didn't succeed, so she didn't continue. Her limbs were on the ground, and she growled at everyone like a wild beast. Why did she attack me? Am I easy to bully? Chen Zhao asked, turning his head to look at Angie. Angie glanced at him and nodded. Probably. The red-skinned woman licked her lips. Let's fight. Come, let's fight. Let's fight with all our strength. Chen Zhao was confused. What's wrong with these people? They're all so warlike. However, Angie was also affected. Streaks of red blood could already be seen under her skin. It wasn't as serious as Matthew's, but it wasn't light either. Moreover, they didn't seem to notice their companion's abnormality. Was he the only one who could see the red streaks? Just as Chen Zhao was distracted again, Matthew spoke. Yusilai? Motorcycle? It's you guys? Matthew's tone showed that he was very surprised. He seemed to recognize the red-skinned woman and the other red-skinned man. What's going on? How did you become like this? Matthew asked. It seemed that Matthew didn't just know them. They were very close. The red-skinned woman in the lead grinned. Matthew, you look the same as 10 years ago. You don't seem to have aged at all. Yusilai, you still remember me? You're not controlled. Matthew originally thought that Yushili was being controlled by something. But Yushili could still call out his name. Judging from her mind and tone, she didn't seem to be controlled. Why exactly? Kill me, or let me kill you, and you'll understand, Yusilai said in a calm yet crazy tone. You're crazy. Huh? Come fight me, the crazy me. Is there something you can't tell me? Tell me. I'll help you. There's nothing. I'm very good right now. Seems like you're really crazy. Maybe I should use holy power to wake you up. Chapter 2270. Matthew could see the madness in Yusilai and the other red-skinned people. But he didn't realize that he was also moving forward on the path of madness. Yusilai arched her body slightly. Her palms, which had been pressed against the ground, also left the ground. Red smoke started rising from her palms. The red smoke didn't disperse. Instead, it condensed into a pair of long swords that looked like they were made of rubies. Matthew was even more confused. What had happened to Yusilai? Back then, Yusilai should have been an elemental spiritualist. But looking at her current posture, her fighting style had completely changed. Yusilai seemed to have locked a wild beast inside her body. It was the same with the motorcycle. However, the current situation didn't allow him to think too much. The team of 10 people had already started fighting with the other red-skinned people. Yusilai charged at Matthew, who faced her head-on. The flaming lightsaber clashed with the red crystal longsword. Sparks and red dust flew into the air. Looks like you've grown a lot in the past 10 years, Yusilai said as she attacked wildly. Her attacks were crazy, but her tone was very rational. She was even recalling the time when she and Matthew had met. Matthew was also attacking and defending, but hearing Yusilai's words, he also sank into his memories. Yushili had met him during the last battle of the Holy Glorious One. 10 years ago, Yusilai had been as powerful as Matthew. As a powerful elemental witch, she had shone brightly in the entire holy glory. If not for Matthew, a genius of the church, Yusilai would probably have been the brightest star in the last battle of holy glory. In the end, Yusilai still lost to Matthew. But she didn't lose in terms of strength. She lost in terms of inheritance. Yusilai was the heir of a witch family, and behind Matthew was the entire church. In terms of inheritance, there weren't many forces in the world that could compete with the church. But after that battle, they hadn't seen each other again. Matthew had never thought that they would be reunited under such circumstances. Chen Zhao watched the crazy fighting on the battlefield. Everyone was showing their craziest side. The others didn't know, but Matthew shouldn't be like this. His rationality seemed to be disappearing from his body bit by bit. And he didn't notice it at all. Everyone at the scene didn't notice it, even though Chen Zhao had warned Matthew beforehand. But he still descended into madness. At this moment the third team appeared. There were 7 of them. They were also part of the Holy Glory participants who were trapped here. Moreover, from the state of their bodies, they had already fought once. There were more or less bloodstains and injuries on their bodies. A normal person's thought process would be to find a place to recuperate after being injured. But looking at their attitude and actions, it was clear that they were not here to rest. They directly joined the battle. There was no hesitation or retreat. The group that had suddenly joined the battle was even crazier than Matthew and the others. Apart from the clothes on their bodies, their skin had already turned completely red. At this moment, a brown-haired girl rushed into the battlefield. Stop! Stop, all of you! Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. The girl didn't seem to be affected. That girl should be a companion of the third group. But she didn't look the least bit deranged. The girl wanted to rush into the battlefield several times to stop the battle. However, she didn't seem to be very strong. At least in Chen Zhao's eyes. The girl was still far from being able to participate in the battle of holy glory. The girl's voice was hoarse, but it was useless. Do you want some throat lozenges? Suddenly, an abrupt voice rang in the girl's ears. Ah! The girl fell to the ground. You're even more cowardly than me. Only then did the girl look up. It was a sickly man. Who are you? The girl realized that the sickly man's skin was very normal. There were no red spots. You're not affected either? The girl asked before Chen Zhao could speak. Chen Zhao was also very curious about the girl. Why wasn't she affected? His overall ability was strong, so he wasn't affected. But looking at this girl, she didn't seem to have much magic power. She could only have a special spell that could resist the red gas. While Chen Zhao was studying the girl was also studying Chen Zhao. Looking at Chen Zhao's sickly appearance, he didn't seem to have any ability. Naturally, she thought that Chen Zhao should have the same spell as her, or at least similar. Why aren't you affected? Chen Zhao asked. Don't you have the answer yourself? Why bother asking? Chen Zhao's face twitched. What answer do I have? What if I tell you that I don't have an answer? You don't have an answer? How you resist the red gas is how I resist it. Since we're the same kind of people, there's no need to keep secrets, the girl said nonchalantly. Red gas. Chen Zhao really didn't know how to resist it, because he didn't resist it at all. Although Chen Zhao wasn't invincible yet, 99% of the external evils in the world were useless against him. However, 99% of the external evils in this world were basically ineffective against him. Seeing the confusion on Chen Zhao's face, the girl asked tentatively, You really don't know that it's red gas? Seeing the confusion on Chen Zhao's face, the girl asked tentatively, You really don't know that this is the red gas? No, I don't know either. The girl immediately shook her head. But looking at her expression, Chen Zhao could tell that she knew. She knew everything. But looking at the girl's expression, she was clearly saying, I know everything. The girl hesitated and then shook her head. I don't know. Those are your friends? Chen Zhao asked, pointing at the third group of people. Are those your friends? Chen Zhao asked, pointing at the third team that had joined the battle. The girl nodded. Yes. They look dangerous. They might die here. Frightened by Chen Zhao, the girl immediately lost her composure. What should we do? What am I going to do? No, I have to stop them. What should I do? Do you have a way to wake them up? I can. But as soon as I get close, they attack me. I can't use scarlet purification. In other words, as long as they don't resist, you can wake them up? The girl looked at the battlefield. My magic power isn't strong enough, so I can't guarantee that I can wake everyone up. And those who have turned completely red, I can't purify them. They've turned into scarlet thugs. Scarlet thugs? What is this? Are they the ones with red skin? Those are high-level scarlet defilers, the girl said. Chapter 2271. Are they classified according to their level of contamination? Chen Zhao asked. The girl nodded. Pointing at the first few with red skin, she said, Those people are the highest level. They've been completely contaminated by the red gas. Moreover, they can continuously produce red gas and contaminate others. So they're called defilers? Yes, the weakest ones are the scarlet thugs. They haven't been completely transformed by the scarlet gas, but their bodies have undergone great changes. In theory, if I have enough strength, I can still force the scarlet gas out of their bodies. However, with my magic power, I can't force the scarlet gas out. As for those with lighter symptoms, they are infected. As long as I can force the scarlet gas out of their bodies in time, their bodies and minds can still return to normal. Then what's the source of the red gas? Chen Zhao asked. These scarlet defilers were obviously transformed from necromancers. Chen Zhao could hear this from Matthew and Yuseli's conversation. What about before these scarlet defilers? It was either an object or a person. There had to be a source. The girl hesitated for a long time, and then shook her head. I don't know. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. This girl didn't even know how to lie. What's your name? Chen Zhao asked. Indelia. Do you know what this place is? This is the ancient Scarlet Battlefield. The ancient Scarlet Battlefield? Please don't tell me there's something sealed here. No. Indelia hurriedly waved her hands in denial. Chen Zhao sighed. The more Indelia reacted like this, the more likely there was something hidden here. What a headache. He hoped that whatever was sealed here wouldn't escape. He hoped that everything here had nothing to do with him. That's good. Chen Zhao was happy that Indelia denied it. He was afraid that Indelia would tell him that it was to maintain world peace, and then force him to do more scenes. Chen Zhao turned his head to look at Matthew and the other teammates. He sighed. They'd taken care of him before. It didn't matter if their care was meaningful. At least they were friends. He couldn't just stand by and watch. Chen Zhao took a few steps forward and took a deep breath. Then, he let out a thunderous roar. Matthew! That voice instantly caused an uproar. Whether it was the scarlet contaminants or the spiritualists who had yet to convert, they all stopped instantly. Matthew's consciousness also fluctuated violently. Haven't you noticed that there's something wrong with you? And your companions, is this how you lead them? A pained expression appeared on Matthew's face. Matthew began to pant heavily, and with each breath, red gas leaked out of his mouth. Amazing! He's actually able to expel the red gas from his body. Delia's face was filled with shock. The red gas did not completely dissipate. Instead, it gathered above Matthew's head. Delia immediately stepped forward and cast a spell from a distance of more than 20 meters. The red cloud above Matthew's head seemed to be attracted by India and began to rush toward her. But the red cloud came to a halt in front of Delia. As Delia continued to rub her palms, the red cloud became smaller and smaller until it completely disappeared. Didn't he expel the scarlet gas from his body? What were you doing just now? The scarlet gas will not dissipate on its own. If the scarlet gas is not completely purified, it will quickly be absorbed back into the body. Therefore, every time the scarlet gas is expelled from the body, it needs to be completely purified. Chen, come and help me. Matthew was very weak at the moment. His arms supported him from the ground. He could not even stand up, so he could only ask for Chen Zhao's help. Chen Zhao helped Matthew up and sent him to a nearby rock to sit down to rest. How do you feel? Very bad, Matthew said weakly. I feel like I'm weaker than you right now. Let me check. Then Chen Zhao lifted Matthew's wrist. At the moment, Matthew wasn't just weak. His blood seemed to have depleted too. Phew. Luckily you were there just now. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have gone crazy too. Matthew's face was extremely pale. As the red gas dispersed, there were no more red spots on his face, but it was still frighteningly pale. You should thank that girl, Chen Zhao said, pointing at Delia. Thank you, Mississippi. My companions are still in trouble. Can you help them solve the problem? Delia looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao shrugged. Sure. Are you sure? You don't look much better than him, Delia said. Chen Zhao grabbed Matthew's shoulder and sent some life force into him. Matthew suddenly felt vigorous energy flow from Chen Zhao's palm into his body. His weakness was receding like the tide. This feels really good. Don't stop. I can only help you this much. The rest is up to you, Chen Zhao said. This spell makes me feel really good. What is it? Can you teach me? No. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. The lesson he was teaching him was life force. Chen Zhao was only giving him blood to replenish his lost blood. How could he give him extra life force? Although Chen Zhao had a lot of life force, it was like a non-renewable resource on Earth. Every time he used it, he would have less. Chen Zhao wouldn't give Matthew more life force. Plus, he couldn't teach it to Matthew. Even if he learned it, he couldn't cast it, unless he was willing to share his life force with others. By the way, is the guy sealed here related to the Scarlet Church? No. Wait. I didn't say anything was sealed here. Delia hurriedly covered her mouth. But her slow reaction couldn't keep the secret. Chen Zhao had only used a little bit of calculation and he had already played Delia around like a fiddle. But this wasn't good news for Chen Zhao. Can you explain it to me? No need. You'll understand soon, Chen Zhao said calmly. Okay. I've talked to people like this many times, but this is the first time someone said it to me. How's your rest? This girl said that if we don't heal your teammates soon, they'll be completely swallowed by the scarlet gas. Okay, I'll do it now. Be careful. Don't let it twist your mind again. Chapter 2272. With his previous experience, Matthew was even more careful this time. Sometimes, people would not learn to be obedient after suffering a loss once. They would only truly wake up after suffering a loss twice. Matthew was like this. This time, he cast an isolation spell on himself. Then he started to attack. His first target was Angie. Chen Zhao looked at the situation on the battlefield. Another group of people charged over from afar. This group was even worse than the spiritualists from before. Their bodies had been completely corroded by the red gas. They had lost all rationality. As soon as they arrived, they joined the battlefield and attacked anyone they wanted. This caused the situation to become more and more chaotic. The first person to die also appeared. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes and looked at the chaos. In such an intense battle, people should have died long ago. But only when this team joined did there start to be casualties. The Scarlet Defilers that had appeared at the beginning were the strongest. However, they didn't kill anyone. They seemed to hold back a third of their strength when they fought with them. This caused them to keep getting injured. After careful observation, Chen Zhao finally understood. They weren't killing people. They were creating more of their kind. Every time they were injured, red gas would seep out of their wounds. Moreover, the scarlet energy would definitely be absorbed. This would make the spiritualist's symptoms worse and worse. In the end, they would be completely corroded. On the spiritualist side, Matthew was the strongest. Chen Zhao's gaze fell on Matthew. Right now, Matthew's magic power had probably recovered by 60%. But he had an overwhelming advantage over Angie. They used the same spell, but they could instantly tell who was stronger. Angie, calm down. Don't be controlled by your madness and anger. I have to purify them. They must die. Anyone who stands in the way of my justice must die. Matthew, are you going to stop me too? Angie's innocent and beautiful face now revealed a ferocious and terrifying expression. For Matthew, any words were superfluous at the moment. Matthew stretched out his hand to grab Angie from a few meters away. Two silver chains flickering with holy radiance shot out from the void, directly binding Angie tightly. Let me go. Angie bellowed, and a pair of angel-like wings shot out from her back. However, that pair of angel wings, which should have been pure white and flawless, was now tinged with red. In an instant, the silver chains shattered as Angie spread her angel wings. Stop! Matthew shouted, and the magic in his body instantly burst out. However, in the next moment, Matthew immediately realized that he could not be swayed by his emotions, and immediately calmed down. It's really troublesome to pay attention to not being affected here, Matthew muttered to himself. However, his hands did not stop at all. He knew Angie too well. Although Angie was his comrade in arms, she was also his student. Angie's outstanding bloodline and talent were all grown under his watch, bit by bit. So when the furious angel showed her angel wings, Matthew wasn't surprised. Of course, if Matthew was at his peak, he could easily suppress Angie. However, he had yet to fully recover, so his strength was far from his peak. Angie flapped her wings and charged at Matthew. Matthew stood where he was, looking like he was going to be captured without a fight. However, the next moment, a pair of pure white wings spread out from Matthew's back. Calm down. Matthew moved in an instant and pressed down with his palm. He pressed Angie to the ground. Angie wanted to struggle, but Matthew was one step ahead. He was behind Angie and held her wings firmly with both hands. Oh, Chen Zhao exclaimed. Angie's wings were real, but Matthew's wings were not. He had used his own holy light power to create this pair of wings. In the end, the real one was suppressed by the fake one. Chen Zhao was curious. What was the use of angel wings? Matthew's angel wings used a lot of magic. But Matthew still used a lot of magic to create a pair of wings. Because his senses were sealed, Chen Zhao could not accurately sense the flow of magic in Matthew's body. "Miss Indelia, please hurry. After all, I can't control her for too long." Under Matthew's urging, Indelia immediately jogged over to Matthew and Angie. Ignoring Angie's struggle, Indelia started guiding the red gas out of Angie's body. The process was the same as Matthew's. The difference was that Matthew used his own willpower to expel the red gas. Angie clearly did not have as strong a willpower as Matthew. However, with Indelia's help, Angie's struggle was no longer as intense. The manic and crazed look on her face also faded. Of course, Angie still remembered everything that had just happened clearly. Angie fell to the ground limp. She said weakly, "Captain. Mr. Matthew, can you let go of me? Also, I know that you plucked a few of my feathers. Give them back to me." Matthew smiled awkwardly and let go of Angie. "It's probably your illusion. I didn't do anything." With that, Matthew looked at Chen Zhao. "Chen, can you help Angie recover?" Cough, cough, cough. "Okay, I'll come up, cough, cough." Chen Zhao suddenly started coughing. It felt like he was going to cough out his heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys. Looking at Chen Zhao, he was afraid that he would spit out a mouthful of blood. Seeing Chen Zhao walk over shakily, Matthew immediately said, Okay, forget it. If you really have the ability, you should suppress your injuries first. Let Angie lie down." Chen Zhao shrugged helplessly. "Fine." Matthew took a deep breath and looked at the others who were still in a frenzy. He wasn't in a good state right now, even though Chen Zhao had helped him recover a little. However, his battle with Angie still made him feel uncontrollably weak. But now was not the time to sigh. Since he was the leader, he had to let all his team members leave this trial safely. Chen Zhao looked at Matthew's figure. Actually, even if he suppressed his power now, it would be a piece of cake for him to recover Angie. However, Chen Zhao really wanted to see where Matthew's limit was. Right now, Matthew had already displayed great power. He was even more powerful than everyone in the supernatural organization's team. But this shouldn't be his limit. Chen Zhao was also secretly shocked. As a top-notch fighter, he could fight against John from the church, or even be stronger. But in terms of low-level fighters, there was still a huge gap between the supernatural organization and the church. Chapter 2273. While Chen Zhao was feeling emotional, Matthew had already finished off his second comrade. Of course, he didn't kill his comrade. He just subdued him. This made Chen Zhao even more amazed. Powerful, at least other than John Sr., Zhang Tianyi, 23rd Snow Mary and Bifla. Matthew was the most outstanding and powerful spiritualist Chen Zhao had ever seen. Even the gaseous members of the same team paled in comparison to Matthew. Not only was his mana and combat power unparalleled, but his willpower was also unparalleled. After Otrando was subdued and purified, Matthew sat on the ground, panting heavily. Matthew sat down on the ground, panting heavily. Matthew sat on the ground, panting heavily. "Matthew, do you need my help?" Chen Zhao asked hypocritically. Actually, if Chen Zhao was willing to help, he could probably solve most of the current problems. No need. Matthew didn't want Chen Zhao to help him recover and end up dying. Looking at Chen Zhao's face, it really looked like he could die at any moment. After resting for a while, Matthew stood up and joined the battle again. This time, he subdued Fail and Bo Untu in one go. His 4 comrades finally regained consciousness. "Mr. Matthew, and my companion, please lend us a hand as well." Delia looked at Matthew with a pleading look. At this moment, Matthew could be said to be exhausted. But Delia had helped him quite a bit earlier, after all. Without Delia, his comrade wouldn't be able to wake up either. Right now he couldn't say anything to refuse, even though his limbs were already trembling. "Little girl, can't you see the current situation? Matthew doesn't have much magic power left. You still want him to join the battle. You're forcing him to die." Chen Zhao felt sorry for Matthew. Although Chen Zhao had been slacking off, it didn't mean that he couldn't stand on Matthew's side and speak up for him. In Delia's expression and gaze revealed her dissatisfaction. "It's fine. Let me rest for a while. I'll be back on the battlefield soon." Matthew was tired, but he still smiled brightly. Just as he said, after a short rest, Matthew stood up again. He seemed to have regained his energy. In fact, Chen Zhao could also see that he was at the end of his rope. Chen Zhao glanced at Delia and put his hand on her shoulder. Girl, if this is your goal, then you've succeeded. But if you go too far, it won't do anyone any good. Mr. Chen, I don't understand what you're saying. When you were purifying them, you were also absorbing the red gas, right? Chen Zhao asked calmly. At first, Chen Zhao didn't notice anything wrong with Delia either. But after purifying the 4 of them, not only did Delia not feel weak, but she was also full of energy, and the aura on her body began to grow stronger. This change was very unusual. Even Chen Zhao couldn't become stronger for no reason. But this change had happened to Delia. Moreover, she did not mean that it had increased by a little. Her aura had increased several times. On the other hand, Angie, Orlando, Fail, and Bounta had all been purified. Although their auras had calmed down, their energy and mana seemed to have been hollowed out. Moreover, India's abnormal attitude made Chen Zhao suspicious of her. Of course, these suspicions weren't enough for Chen Zhao to make a conclusion. What really made Chen Zhao suspicious was that some of the teammates that India had been chasing had already died. But India did not react at all. She did not even feel sad. This was Chen Zhao's biggest doubt about her. She didn't care about her teammates. She only cared about how much red gas she could absorb. Delia turned her head silently and looked at Chen Zhao. An obscure smile appeared on her face. Mr. Chen, can't we keep this tacit understanding? Why do we have to make things clear? India didn't hide anymore. She was no longer that naive girl who didn't even know how to lie. Actually, if one thought about it carefully, they would find some problems. But Chen Zhao had neglected a few. Now she didn't hide anymore. I don't like being kept in the dark. If you can tell me everything, maybe I can pretend to be a mute. Mr. Chen, look at the current situation. Those 4 guys are lying there, unable to do anything. Mr. Matthew is exhausted, and you look like you're half dead. And now, I've absorbed the power of 4 people. Are you sure it's in everyone's best interest to make things clear? I think so. Chen Zhao nodded. But I still want to know. Chen Zhao turned around, so that his back was facing the 4 church members lying on the ground. Before India could understand Chen Zhao's intentions, Chen Zhao had already pinched her cheeks. You'd better tell me the whole story, okay? After all, I don't want to ruin your pretty face. India's cheeks hurt from Chen Zhao's pinching. She wanted to break free from Chen Zhao's hands. However, Chen Zhao's power wasn't something she could resist. Suddenly, India's eyes glowed red and shot at Chen Zhao's face. But Chen Zhao was unharmed. Crack. Delia could hear the sound of her own jawbone cracking. Chen Zhao's strength was also increasing. Shocked, Delia slapped Chen Zhao's chest with both hands. But Chen Zhao still didn't react. He was completely fine. What was going on? What was wrong with this guy? Wasn't he heavily injured? Why didn't my attacks have any effect? If you agree to my request, then blink. If not, you don't have to do anything. Chen Zhao smiled at India. Don't worry. After I crush your head, I'll pretend that I was attacked by something. Delia immediately blinked. At this moment, she also realized that the man in front of her was not as harmless as he seemed on the surface. India panicked too. She'd thought that Chen Zhao was a sickly person. That was why she'd admitted it confidently. In the end, this man looked like a sickly person, but he was actually a lion in disguise. If you scream, even if they misunderstand, I'll still kill you. I think you know what to do. India nodded. Only then did Chen Zhao release his hands. India's tears were squeezed out by Chen Zhao's hands. There was even a red mark on her face. India's chest heaved up and down. Her face was filled with hatred. She hesitated. She glanced at the 4 people lying on the ground, and then at Matthew, who was fighting in the distance. What? Are you hoping that someone will come and save you? Or are you using your not-so-good trickery skills to get sympathy from others? Chapter 2274. Delia hesitated for a long time. Even if she called for help now, Matthew and the others might not stand on her side. Plus, Chen Zhao looked sickly, but he wasn't weak. She might not be his match, even if she absorbed the magic power of 4 people. Even if Matthew and the others stood on her side, they might not be able to defeat Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked at Delia. What, are you still thinking about whether you can turn the tables? Delia clenched her teeth and said, I practice scarlet magic. Oh, and then? You don't understand the meaning of scarlet magic. Explain it to me, Chen Zhao said. Delia's face twitched. She didn't even understand scarlet magic. What a waste of her feelings. Anyway, it's a magic system that the spiritual world doesn't accept. There are magic systems that the spiritual world doesn't accept? There are many people who cultivate dark magic and necromancy. I've never seen anyone being hunted for it. Scarlet magic is different. What's different? More evil? More powerful? Or crueler? Scarlet magic cultivates scarlet aura. Once someone absorbs the scarlet aura, they'll be turned into scarlet thugs, scarlet fanatics, or the even more terrifying scarlet polluters. If there are enough scarlet polluters, they can even distort an entire city or country. Oh, that's the reason. Chen Zhao could understand. Both dark magic and necromancy looked evil. But it was only because the person was strong or evil. But scarlet magic could turn others into scarlet monsters. This made the user of scarlet magic a source of pollution. It was like a product produced by a chemical factory. Perhaps everyone could use it and get used to it. But if there was a chemical factory in front of their house, no one would like it. It was the same for scarlet magic. As you guessed, they absorbed the scarlet gas. And the scarlet gas absorbed their magic power. When they expelled the scarlet gas from their bodies, I absorbed their scarlet gas and obtained their magic power. This was within Chen Zhao's expectations. When Delia's aura strengthened, Chen Zhao was already suspicious. Although Chen Zhao's senses were suppressed, Delia's aura grew stronger and spread towards Chen Zhao. She clearly did not know how to control her aura. Those aren't your comrades, right? No. Delia glanced at those figures on the battlefield. Who are they? I'm nobody. Delia calmly replied. I don't know them. Like you, they are participants in the battle of holy glory. But when you came before, you were shouting and yelling. Because of you, Delia said. I followed them here, and then I discovered you. You were also not affected by the scarlet gas. You followed them to absorb the scarlet gas from their bodies? That's right. If we're not here, how are you going to absorb it? Do it yourself. Although the process will be rather complicated, it's not impossible, Delia said. What she was implying was that she was also capable of fighting. Those scarlet defilers were created by you? No, as I said before, they have nothing to do with me, Delia said. How am I supposed to believe you? After all, your powers are the same. Those scarlet defilers were created by this battlefield, not me. This battlefield? You said there's something hidden below, right? Delia started to hesitate again. Are you still planning to hide it now? Knowing too much won't do you any good. You know, I hate this sentence the most. Everyone has curiosity and a thirst for knowledge. What's hidden below is the source of scarlet magic, the red demon. The church's first crusade was to suppress him. In that war, the church had 120,000 holy crusaders, but less than 3,000 returned alive. According to records, the first crusade was in the 11th century, and the Wasteland Market was built before that. The original design of the Wasteland Market was not to suppress the red demons, but to be used as a mausoleum. Tomb. Theodosius I? He has that much influence. Chen Zhao was surprised. Theodosius I? He doesn't have that much influence. He's just a mausoleum keeper. This is God's tomb, Delia said. And after the red demon was destroyed, he would continue to resurrect. In order to prevent him from continuing to wreak havoc in the world, the red demon was suppressed here, using the body of a god to suppress the demon, and a large number of holy church troops were sent to guard this place. You're saying that there's a god's body here? Yes. Apart from God's power, there's no other way to suppress the red demon. What about these skeletons? These were left by the holy army that guarded this place back then, Delia said. Back then, the red demon was suppressed here, but his power kept seeping out. Just like the scarlet defilers, it corrupted the holy army back then. In the end, they completely mutated and fell. In the end, The uncorrupted Holy Army and the corrupted Defilers started a war here. Both sides died, and the scarlet magic came into being. Back then, the Holy Army developed the scarlet magic to cure their corrupted comrades. Thus, the scarlet magic has the effect of restraining the scarlet aura to a certain extent. However, it has no effect on those who are deeply corrupted. You're saying that Theodosius I isn't the owner of this tomb? He's just a mausoleum keeper? Of course. How could he have the right to use such a huge tomb? This wasteland market was built for only one purpose: to be used by the last ancient god in the human world. Oh, which ancient god? Is he famous? The sun god Apollo, Delia said. Whoosh! Chen Zhao couldn't help but exclaim. The sun god Apollo. Anyone who knew Greek mythology would know the sun god Apollo. After all, he was a very recognizable god. Then why are you here? Chen Zhao asked. I was teleported here, Delia answered. I don't know the specifics. That's a coincidence. As the user of the scarlet magic, you were teleported to the birthplace of the scarlet magic? I doubt it. Chapter 2275. Think about it. If I could enter here on my own, would I still be so weak? Delia said. This doesn't clear your name. From what you said earlier, your scarlet magic needs to absorb the scarlet aura expelled from other people's bodies, and then turn it into your own power. Even if you can enter this area freely, you can't just absorb the scarlet aura here to increase your power. Delia's expression darkened. Chen Zhao continued. The Battle of the Holy Glory starts in the desolate town. Many participants come in, so you have a chance to enter the desolate town, and even this scarlet battlefield. Maybe everyone, including me, was sent here because of your scheme. No, it's not me. Delia quickly waved her hands. This has nothing to do with me. It's not me. Go to the battlefield and help Matthew, Chen Zhao said. Use your actions to show your stance. I'm not good at fighting. No, you are. Chen Zhao shook his head. The two spells you used to attack me just now show that you have powerful offensive spells. You don't have to act weak before me or the others here. I don't believe or accept it. Why didn't you do anything? You're clearly stronger than me. It seems like you're more suspicious. Maybe you're the real mastermind. Of course I know I'm not. No matter how you doubt me, as long as I'm stronger than you, I don't have to prove anything to you. Chen Zhao smiled at Delia. Delia glanced at the others. She wanted to team up against Chen Zhao again. However, she'd absorbed most of the others' magic. They wouldn't recover without a few days. Matthew was in a bad state too. He didn't have much power to fight against Chen Zhao now. Under Chen Zhao's threat, Delia finally made a decision. She temporarily obeyed Chen Zhao's order and went to help Matthew. Matthew was already at the end of his rope. He didn't have much power to continue a high-intensity battle. Moreover, he wasn't facing just one enemy, but enemies after enemies. They didn't line up one by one. Instead, they worked together and kept attacking him. He was already tired from dealing with them. He could feel that he was almost at his limit. Suddenly, a red light passed by Matthew's side and hit the opponent in front of him. Matthew turned around in surprise and saw that it was India. Miss Delia, why are you? Let me help you. India gave Matthew a forced smile. Thank you. With India's support, the pressure on Matthew was greatly reduced. Matthew's current state was similar to that of a character in an online game. His HP was halved, and his mana was almost depleted. However, he was still able to go on a rampage. But India's appearance and help Matthew restrain the enemy gave him time to recover his magic. As Matthew fought, he glanced at Chen Zhao not far away. Noticing Matthew's gaze, Chen Zhao smiled and waved his hand. Matthew was not just a simple monk. As the main target of the church's training, he had a meticulous mind. Soon, he realized that there was something wrong with Chen Zhao. Of course, there was something wrong with Delia too. But soon the battle between Matthew and India ended. In the end, they retreated. The situation was already developing in a direction that they could not control. A few more groups of people joined in. All of them were spiritualists contaminated by the red gas. Dozens of spiritualists and the Scarlet Defilers had turned the place into a crazy battlefield. They attacked each other like wild beasts, as if the other was their mortal enemy. The casualties kept increasing. Matthew was not in a good state. After a series of battles, he was extremely weak now. Look at you. Can't you just watch like me? Why did you have to join in the fun and end up like this? Matthew smiled bitterly and sat on the ground. He glanced at his partner, who was even weaker than him. Then he looked at Chen Zhao. Chen, can you tell me the truth? You have nothing to do with all this. I promise you, I have nothing to do with it. Chen Zhao shrugged. What about her? Matthew looked at Delia again. Delia turned her head. She knows more than I do. Most of what I know is from her. She probably hasn't told me many things. If you think you're capable, you can try to make her talk. Chen Zhao nodded. Delia nodded. You're right. I've already told you everything I know. I'm not hiding anything. Just from this, I can say for sure that you're still hiding many things. At least some key information, Chen Zhao said. Even if you say that, I can't give you more information. I've already told you everything I know. After a while, Matthew stood up again. Chen, we have to leave, Matthew said. Their battle is about to spread here. If we stay here, we'll be dragged back into the battlefield. If they did not leave now, they really would not be able to. Plus, there were 4 partners on the ground. Once the battle spread here, Matthew would not even be able to protect them. Help me carry one, I'll carry 2. Miss and Delia, help me carry one of my companions as well. No need to be so troublesome, Chen Zhao said. As he spoke, darkness spread out from under his feet. The dark lava was like liquid. It lifted Bountu, Angie, Fee, and Orlando up. Let's go, Chen Zhao said. Is this dark magic? It's convenient for you to use it like this, Matthew said in a relaxed tone. What? Do you want to try purifying me? Forget it. I'm in such a bad state, and you're not either. If there's a chance in the future, let's spar again. Miss India, shouldn't you lead the way and take us to a safe place? Chen Zhao asked, looking at India. Why do you think there's a safe place here? You should have arrived here earlier than any of us, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Your strength isn't enough for you to move around here safely, so you must have a safe hiding place. Otherwise, you would have been dead long ago. Chen Zhao nodded. Although I arrived here earlier than you, I didn't find any place to hide. The reason why I haven't been attacked is because my power comes from the same source as those scarlet defilers. They treat me as one of their kind, and I'm not affected by the scarlet gas. Chapter 2276. The scarlet battlefield was huge. Judging from the number of skeletons here, there were more than 1 million dead. Were there more than 1 million people who participated in this battle? Chen Zhao asked curiously. If you count all the units from both sides, there were indeed more than 1 million, but most of them weren't humans. Oh, were there other races? Magical beasts, dragons, elves, demons, and other races, as well as humanoids, all participated in the battle. There were only 120,000 holy crusaders among the humans. But there are more than 120,000 human skeletons here. Most of the skeletons here seem to be human. Most of the human skeletons here are actually an army of skeletons summoned by hundreds of necromancers. That battle should be the largest in the Western spiritual world in the past 1,000 years. Didn't the Eastern spiritual world participate? Chen Zhao asked curiously. The East and the West should have interacted with each other in that era, right? Do you think the Eastern spiritual world is peaceful? Fine, every family has its own difficulties. Chen Zhao shrugged. How do we leave now? If we go in this direction, we'll see a cave that leads to the surface. Along the way, there are 548 holy swords. They were collected from all over the world in that era. Almost every sword has the power to subdue demons and expel evil. They contain holy power. The 548 holy swords were set up to prevent the scarlet defilers from escaping, Delia said. Delia said, however, those 548 holy swords can't distinguish between friend and foe. As long as a living creature approaches that place, it will be attacked by all the holy swords. That's our only way out. But if we go there, we'll definitely die. Matthew turned to look at Delia. 548 holy swords? The Holy Dynasty? That's right. The 548 holy swords form the Holy Dynasty. What Holy Dynasty? Chen Zhao asked curiously. The Holy Dynasty is actually the name of this magic array. This magic array also has another name, the 548 legend. Legend has it that in the 3rd century AD, there was a dynasty called the Adusi dynasty. The king of the Adusi dynasty was cruel and heartless, and disobeyed the will of God. So God sent 548 angels to destroy the Adusi dynasty in one night. They transformed into 548 holy swords, and forever guarded that land blessed by evil. Matthew said. In fact, the truth is not that the angels descended, but that the church suppressed the Adusi dynasty. They used 548 legendaries, and after that war, they got a new name, the Holy Dynasty. In other words, if we want to leave this place and return to the surface, we have to pass through the 548th legend, pass through the magic array that can destroy an entire country? You could say that, India said. Is there no other way? Matthew pondered for a while and said, maybe I can give it a try, but I'm not completely sure. Is there no other way out? If he didn't have to, he really didn't want to face these ancient nuclear weapons. A magic array that could destroy an entire country. No matter how small the country was, it was still a country. Most importantly, Chen Zhao was in a very bad state right now. Oh, speaking of which, you're also from the church. You should have a way to crack the 548th legend, right? I can't crack it. Matthew shook his head. I don't have the ability to crack the magic array. What I can try now is to not be attacked by it. The underground space was more than 10,000 square kilometers, almost the size of 2 large cities combined. Because of the environment, they basically couldn't see the end. The group walked for about 2 hours. Chen Zhao finally saw the edge. The wall before them was probably thousands of square kilometers in one direction. At the bottom of the wall, they could see a huge cave. It's there, India said, pointing at the cave. I can feel that there's a holy aura hidden there, Matthew said. I can understand the Holy Dynasty, and I can also understand the number 548. But why is it called legendary? Every holy sword is a legend, Matthew said. Every holy sword's owner has an illustrious and legendary past. The moment they entered the cave, they saw countless skeletons of unusual creatures. A silver sword was stabbed into the rock in the middle of the skeletons. Even though it had been here for thousands of years, it was still eye-catching. Everyone's first impression when they saw the silver sword was that it was a solemn elder. It was stern and dignified, staring at the exit without a smile. All living beings that approached this place were under its gaze. The piles of skeletons around them had all died under the silver sword. Silver Dawn, Matthew whispered, his face full of reverence and seriousness. You know the sword. In ancient times, before God revealed his divine might, everything in the world was in chaos. People shivered in the dark, and barbarism and death continued to spread and breed. A warrior forged a weapon for himself to split the chaos and slay the darkness. This warrior was the first paladin, Ammis Tefun, and the weapon he forged and wielded was the Silver Dawn. Really? It's a pretty sword, Chen Zhao commented. But at that moment, Silver Daybreak suddenly flew out of the rock and stabbed at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao immediately raised his palm to block. Hiss! Chen Zhao's palm was instantly pierced. The tip of the sword was only half an inch away from his forehead. Chen Zhao's eyes widened. Even though he was suppressing his power in his body, inside his body, his constitution wouldn't weaken because of this. Not to mention cold weapons, even the most high-end firearms might not be able to hurt him. But now his palm was pierced by a sword. However, the Silver Dawn was also stuck in the middle of Chen Zhao's palm, unable to move forward. Chen Zhao didn't underestimate the magic formation, but he didn't pay much attention to one of the swords. But now, his defense had been broken by a sword. Matthew and the others were shocked too. They didn't know what to do. On the other hand, Chen Zhao used his pierced hand to grab the sword hilt as a shield. The Silver Dawn immediately tried to break free. However, it clearly couldn't compete with Chen Zhao in terms of strength. Chen Zhao grabbed it tightly. It was painful, but he didn't want the Silver Dawn to cut his palm open. The two were in a contest of strength. The Silver Dawn clearly didn't want to give up. Chen Zhao also didn't want to wait for death. Chapter 2277. Chen Zhao grabbed the hilt with his other hand and pulled hard. Although the Silver Daybreak wasn't controlled by anyone, it wasn't weak at all. Chen Zhao couldn't use his full power now, but it was still inhuman. The sword before him actually made Chen Zhao feel a bit strained. However, Chen Zhao still pulled the sword out bit by bit. Finally, the Silver Daybreak was pulled out. The Silver Daybreak immediately struggled violently, trying to break free from Chen Zhao's hand. Chen Zhao stabbed the blade into the ground. At the same time, he gripped the hilt tightly. "Chen, are you okay?" Matthew and the others hurried to Chen Zhao. "I'm fine, but this sword is really fierce." Even though Chen Zhao had stabbed the Silver Daybreak into the ground and was still holding the hilt, the sword was still vibrating. "Didn't you say you have a way?" Chen Zhao asked. "I'll try." Matthew wasn't too sure either. Matthew reached out to grab the hilt of the Silver Daybreak. Chen Zhao let go of it. Matthew's power of holy light started to come into contact with the Silver Daybreak's power. The Silver Daybreak didn't seem so intense anymore. Matthew heaved a long sigh, but the moment he let go of the hilt, the Silver Daybreak suddenly rose from the ground and stabbed at Matthew. At this time, Matthew's condition was extremely poor, and the attack came too suddenly. He didn't even have time to defend. The Silver Daybreak was about to stab Matthew. Chen Zhao grabbed the hilt, so that the Silver Daybreak couldn't go any further. Matthew looked at the tip of the sword that was less than half an inch away from him. Suddenly, he broke out in a cold sweat. "Looks like you failed." Matthew looked at Chen Zhao helplessly. "Sorry. In that case, I can only destroy the sword," Chen Zhao said. It was impossible to control the sword anymore. The sword struggled wildly in Chen Zhao's hand. The moment Chen Zhao let go, the Silver Daybreak would cause damage. Matthew hesitated, but in the end he nodded helplessly. To Matthew, destroying the Silver Daybreak was a blasphemous act. But he had no other choice now. The Silver Daybreak sensed Chen Zhao's murderous intent and struggled even more violently. But without anyone controlling it, the Silver Daybreak was like rootless duckweed. Chen Zhao suddenly raised the Silver Daybreak and struck the rock. Clang! For a moment sparks flew everywhere. The Silver Daybreak did not break, but it did make a dent. In an instant, the Silver Daybreak's spirituality weakened. Chen Zhao raised the sword again and slashed down. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions as the sword broke. A massive amount of divine power gushed out from the broken sword. Everyone had different expressions. Only Chen Zhao was expressionless. "Chen, how's your hand?" Chen Zhao raised his palm and looked at it. "It's almost done." Matthew saw that Chen Zhao's palm, which should have been pierced, had already healed. Matthew's face was full of surprise. "What kind of magic is this?" "No," Chen Zhao said. "I have extraordinary self-healing abilities." "Your self-healing ability is so strong. How many injuries did you suffer before?" "I can't even heal myself." Matthew still thought that Chen Zhao's previous weakness was due to his injuries. Chen Zhao shrugged and didn't explain further. "One sword is already so hard to deal with. There are still 547 swords behind us. If they're all like this, we'll probably die along the way. Maybe the next sword will kill all of us." Matthew's expression was serious. It was just as Chen Zhao had said. They weren't facing just one or two enemies now. It was a magic formation that could destroy an entire country. Even if they destroyed one sword now, it didn't mean anything. As long as the eye of the formation wasn't destroyed, the magic formation wouldn't disappear. "We don't have to face all the holy swords," Delia said. And Delia said, "This magic array has a very wide range. Right now we should only be in one of the branches of the magic array. The Holy Dynasty's method of coverage is centered around the core of the magic array, and then spread out in lines. If we go along this cave, we might encounter some holy swords along the way. However, as long as we can survive for a while, find the core of the magic array, and destroy it, then the holy swords behind will become masterless objects. They will no longer be controlled by the magic array, and will not take the initiative to attack us." "But in our current state," Matthew said, "even if we face a single-digit number of holy swords, we might still get injured. He wasn't afraid of taking risks, but he wasn't alone now. With the team's current state, only he and Chen Zhao had a certain amount of combat power. Both he and Chen Zhao were injured. He even felt that Chen Zhao had recovered quickly after being injured. It seemed like he'd recovered, but he must have used up a lot of magic and energy. Perhaps he would be fighting alone for the rest of the journey. The dangerous journey ahead would likely result in the loss of members of the current team. Maybe we should retreat for now instead of advancing recklessly. Matthew's suggestion was undoubtedly the most conservative, and also the steadiest. They could wait until the others recovered a certain amount of combat power, or wait until they recovered their strength before thinking about coming here. No, it's still too early to retreat, Chen Zhao said. No matter what, it's just our guess. Maybe it'll be easier later. Even if we encounter big trouble later, we can still choose to retreat. I think so too, India agreed. Okay, since you insist, we'll continue. Matthew had no choice but to agree. The only thing he could do now was pray that their team wouldn't encounter more trouble. After walking for less than 10 minutes, they realized that the skeletons along the way had increased again. And there were many, many more. Countless mutant skeletons were scattered on the ground. A longsword floated in the air before them. The skeletons below had already gathered into a pyramid. The moment everyone appeared in front of the sword, the seemingly simple and unadorned sword suddenly erupted with a power as strong as a storm. Without any hesitation, the longsword slashed down with unparalleled sword aura. Oh no! Careful! Matthew cried. Chen Zhao suddenly jumped to the side, barely dodging the sword aura. Such powerful sword aura! Matthew exclaimed. What's the origin of this sword? Judging from the sword's shape, it should be a Chinese sword. It has a thick sword aura, but that's all I can see. I can't give you any more information. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.